Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is August 3rd, my 33rd anniversary of doing the Mark system. For you, it's going to be the 4th. This video will be up on Tuesday at 9 p.m. And so, no reason to say anything like congratulations or anything. It's not like that. But I do a long voiceover. I had a dream with the third master of the system and some other stuff. So there's going to be a long thing at the end of this video about that. Um, so let me show you this. My wife sent me this last night, maybe, I'm not sure.
Donald Trump just announced that he is setting up an insider trading information subscription service. If you pay Donald Trump, $100,000 a month, he will give you early access to the announcements he's making.
All right, so let me show you what this is about. You know, this would be stunning. It's almost hilarious, like the level of grifting here. And it's everything this guy's saying and more. So I called it the Trump Early Information app. Truth Social launched a high-speed data feed called Truth API that provides financial firms and investors with real-time early access to posts from President Donald J. Trump and other high official accounts before they hit the general public feed. It's released August 1st, launch date. Cost up to $100,000 per month for institutional trading subscribers. So, you know, I was thinking about this, and I think my wife sent this in an email. She sent this in an email. And I don't know whether I saw insider trading or not, or I just had this thought independently before. It's unclear. But I was thinking about how the only reason to have a stock market is for insider trading, right? The only reason to create financial games, whether it be gambling or, you know, and the stock market is basically gambling. I mean, it's gambling. It's not basically, it's gambling. It's a legal form of gambling. You're betting on business, right? It's, you know, and the only reason to do something like that is if the game is rigged. You know, gambling, I mean, Las Vegas, I lived near Vegas, and that they have crazy amounts of money because there's nothing better than tourist money. The only thing better than tourist money is gambling money, and they have both. You know, tourist money is just people who work hard all year to blow a shit ton of money on a vacation to make their lives mean something. And gambling is just giving away free money. It's like people just giving you their money because the system's so rigged against them. Some people just want to lose on top of it. They're like, particularly, they just can't wait to give their money away. But you're betting against the house. And the only reason to have a stock market is because you have inside information, right? You have a way that you have a rigged system where, you know, it's getting money from the collective. It's like taxes, right? It's just free money where you don't even have to work for it. You don't have to do anything. You just have to have knowledge. You have to have more knowledge than everybody else. And so going into a game, going into a contest where money's on the line and you have an advantage is, you know, like when you play sports and you play things for, you know, games of chance and, you know, things that are competitive, you know, there's fun in that, right? But when you do something like set up a system, you want to make money. When it's to make money, then you need inside information. And so insider trading is the essential reason behind the stock market. The subscription gives high-frequency traders millisecond-level speed advantage and potentially market-moving policy statements or announcements made by the president. Critics of the lawmakers have raised legal and ethical concerns, arguing that the paid service amounts to selling front-row access to privileged or market-moving information from the president. So this tells you two things. One, Trump just three things. Trump does not give a fuck how things appear. Like, he just doesn't. And we know that already. But this is even more so, because this is insider trading. Two, that he's willing to just blatantly sell this thing on Truth Social. He's willing to sell inside information to people and make money on that. But he also is making money because he knows how valuable it is. He's like, hey, we're making money because we know what we're going to do, right? So if he's going to bet on the stock market based on his insider knowledge, he's like, how can we make more money? You know, there's these people who sell their picks, you know, for football gambling. You know, people who do a lot of information analysis, and they'll sell you their sure things and their top bets. If you're a betting person, you subscribe to these people who have a high winning percentage, and some of them do, and some of them are just grifting. But it's a guaranteed form of income because, Trump might think his tweet is gonna, his true social post is gonna affect the markets one way, but it's not guaranteed. But you paying him to find out that information, that's guaranteed fucking money, right? And so, and he is going to make those tweets. I mean, sometimes he changes his mind at the last minute. But if you can get information and bet against, the short something or make a quick bet, they have these. They were doing these. I forget the term for it, but it's some kind of high speed trading where the computers would analyze other people's trades and get your trade in before theirs got in. Like they would see where all the money was going, like milliseconds. Like they would some way they would be able to sort of slow down the trades of the people who were buying whatever, and you would be able to buy before they bought, even though they technically did it before you did. And so if they saw there was a massive amount of trades being done on something, you could get in there first because high frequency trading or something, whatever it is, there's a term for it. And so, this is just straight up fucking grifting. He's grifting on his information, and then he's also selling his information and just fucking doing it with a fuck you. I mean, there's no, like in having social media be a part, it's so fucking bad. It's so fucking blatant. It's like, well, I mean, it's hilarious how fucking in your face it is and how fucking shitty it is. So yeah, that's a good place to start here. So this is Marjorie Taylor Brown. Look at her. Look at her go. Me preparing for my Netflix documentary on how we are going to burn both parties to the ground and launch a political revolution. I'm tired of these late to the party motherfuckers, as you probably know. I talk about them all the time. You know, she started off as a QB. And then she became a reformed QB. To her credit, she recognized a lot of the Q shit was stupid, but never really got to the fact that Q was a intelligence community weapon, intelligence agency weapon, not community. They were using it against the truth community and everybody else. They created Q to create, the whole Trump thing, all that stuff, and division in America and all the things. Like it's, Q anonymous intelligence community, posts to create a fucked up group of people that would just shit all over and destroy the truth community, just in terms of their stupidity and then lack of credibility and all these things. And it was bad. Like all of us who suffered through it was bad. And, the truth community's never been the same since. I mean, just in terms of the content. Like the content has sucked. And then it warped everything towards the right and just all the stuff. The Trump stuff, all the dumb fucks, all the stuff. And she was a part of that. So she worked her way past that, but she then embraced Trump. So she went from the QAnon bullshit to Trump, which is, at best a lateral move of stupidity. And then she came to terms to what a piece of shit Trump is. So, like late to the party only because of Epstein. And then her and Trump went at it, but she was still defending Trump, saying that it was people around him, and she wouldn't come out and say that he was actually part of the Epstein thing when he clearly was. And then, then finally now going to being a third party person. And, when you go through what she went through, any of these people, when you reach this whatever level you get to at these things, at some point you have to come to terms with the fact that fucking there is no changing the two-party system. There's no political solution. There's zero. And the system itself can't be fixed. And when you yourself have been a piece of shit, because she's, like she has to be in front of people. She has to run her big fucking mouth. There's some people in the truth community that it's about them. I mean, it's always going to be a little bit about you, but they just want to be seen. Everybody look at me. And when you're an everybody look at me person, you're worthless because you're not doing it because of some sincere reason. Like the only real reason to do anything is, having some greater purpose, service to God, altruistic, selfless, that you want to make the world a better place, something like that. Like something that compels you to, not that you want people to see you or look at you or hear you or whatever. Like that can't be a part of it because that'll corrupt the shit out of you. Even if you have pure intentions, you have to get rid of your need for glory, your need to be seen, all these other things. And she clearly hasn't been able to do that. And so, like she's got a documentary already. There's been a lot of us here that realize the two-party system's been shit for 20 years. And like, why don't you contact us? Like, why don't you watch our shit, right? Why don't you watch the left-right paradigm people? Why don't you watch some black-pilled stuff? And, because it's clear that the system is not even broken. It works exactly the way it's designed. And so you can't fix a system that was never broken. That's just its whole design. It's like trying to fix the gambling industry or the stock market. You think you're going to make the gambling industry or the stock market or any of these grifting fucking tools out there? You think you're going to make, come on, like you're going to make them bet, fuck you, right? Like, So anyways, that's Marjorie Trader Brown thinking she's going to set the political world aflame. Okay, so I ate lunch and I saw some coverage on this on MSNBC or CNN. So Trump has backed Jean Pereiro's decision to prosecute this guy. And she said, I guess it's the athlete guy, I'm not sure. One of the reflecting pool people. And she said she had a slam dunk and she could prove that there was over $1,000 worth of damage to the reflecting pool so they could charge this guy with a felony. And it's clear that that was not the case at all. I mean, it was clear in the beginning because the thing was fucking flaking out all over the place. I mean, it's one of those things where you fuck up and the reflecting pool is a fucking mess and some people start ripping pieces off of it or some shit like that or whatever they're doing to already damaged pool, and you prosecute them because you don't want to admit your failure. I mean, this is what this is, right? And Jean Pereiro does whatever Trump wants her to do, even though she knows it's bullshit. This is everything that's wrong with the human race, this kind of egotistical behavior. And even when you're proven wrong, you can't admit to it. And so to add to that, this guy fucking, who's a Republican guy, just said something else about Trump here.
Ask you about another big topic this week, Senator. The Justice Department just this week dropped its charges against the Olympic canoeist that it accused of vandalizing the reflecting pool on the National Mall. The DOJ admitted that the damage was caused by, quote, botched installation and not vandalism. This was a case that the DOJ had said was open and shut. They said they could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Does this reversal undercut the public's faith in the Justice Department, Senator?
Well, the whole thing is a multiple vehicle pileup. Let me start with the president. The president says it was caused by vandals. I don't know whether he really believes that.
Well, what? Was he delusional or just a lying piece of shit? But then it gets worse.
Or it's part of his political messaging, or he's just thinking out loud. You and I both know the president well. He exists loudly, and he grows anxious when he has an unexpressed thought.
Kaboom! Fucking kaboom, right? But think about this guy who's backed Trump's bullshit. And he's backed Israel. I saw the interview he did with that other comedian from, whatever that guy's name is. I can't think of his name. You know who I mean. He's a Southern comedian, younger guy. Used to be on the Real World, I think, show, whatever. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. It's, fairly popular podcast. It'll come back around or I'll look it up later, so don't bother commenting. That's what don't tell me, don't care, I don't need to know thing is. Like, I need to know it now, and when you comment, I already remember, right? So it's not, But he's totally backed Israel in a way that was just icky, this motherfucker. And he's backed Trump in so many ways. But what he just said is Trump grows anxious when he has an unexpressed thought, which is a great description of some of Trump's bullshit. Like, Trump can't just not say something. And I have that same thing, not nearly as bad as Trump. I mean, if I have something important to say. But Trump just says bullshit and lies and grifting stuff and, deceptive stuff, ideas that are just, delusional. Where he starts believing his own lies, but also his lies are there to gain an advantage with other people and muddy the waters and put out disinformation. But when you know that, when this piece of shit knows this, and all these people, right? Like he says he doesn't know if the president really believed it or not. Yeah, everyone knew it was bullshit. But Fox News covered it like it was legitimate, and all of Trump's fucking taint lickers all went along with them. And this guy's, at least a minor league Trump taint licker. He's telling the truth here. But that means Trump can't be president. That means Trump tries to force his reality. Trump would like to believe that it's Vandal's fault for his failure on the reflecting pool. When Trump fails, he'll do anything in his power to make sure that everyone doesn't believe he failed or force everyone to believe he didn't fail. I mean, Trump can't admit failure, which is fucking something you got to do as a leader, because you're going to make mistakes, especially when you don't do research. You don't have a good mind, and you're a lying, grifting piece of shit like Trump. You're going to make mistakes all the time. You're going to overpromise things. You're going to say things are going to go a certain way and they're not, and then you're going to try to force everyone just to agree with you in some dystopian fucking tyrannical way, right? This guy is unfit to do anything. He should be in fucking jail. This is a sociopath. This is a person who can't function in society. This is a person that should just be taken off the fucking board. Like, you can't allow these kind of people to run wild in your system. You certainly don't elect him fucking your leader. This is a criminal fucking, person who has the inability to function in a way that he considers other people as having rights and having a purpose. And like, he thinks he's, everyone else is goy. Like, he thinks everyone else is goy to him. Unless it's somebody higher up, which he, wants to gain their favor or whatever it might be, or somebody who praises him, which again, they exist only to praise him. But, you can't fucking back this guy in any way, shape, or form. This guy's voted with Trump so many times and they protected him. They're starting to bail on him a little bit. It's starting to unravel for Trump. But, I turned on the news this morning and they were doing polls. And they said that the Republicans are down to 53% chance to retain the Senate. And I'm like, how can it be that fucking close? Like, how bad are the Democrats and how stupid are fucking the Trumpers and the Republican people not that, I don't give a shit about any of this. I think humanity is a lost cause. The majority of human beings, like, there has to be a next step of evolution, which is something that is the goal of the Sajmark system and a prediction that people are going to rise up to a higher level and leave humanity, behind like they're the Neanderthal. Like, there'll be a new evolved beings and people will go extinct. The human being of today will give way to something better, a more spiritualized, a more evolved creature, right? A more evolved race of people. And it'll stem from spirituality and their connection to the divinity within them. That's why I think, like, you really want to get in the ground up, you start working towards that. There's supposed to be a genetic mutation, all these things. But humans right now are a failed species, failed experiment. Unless we can jump up to another level, we're fucked, and shouldn't be allowed to continue to destroy this fucking planet. Any kind of divine system would wouldn't work if it would allow human beings to continue in this direction. But clearly, there has to be some sort of correction. But in all that, you have all these fucking people out there that take this seriously, and they take politics seriously, and they vote and these things. How can you think that Trump should have the Senate on his side for 2 more years? And they've been talking about how Trump's going to get his ass kicked, and I thought the poll numbers were worse than they are. They've dropped. They went down from 60% to 50%. But how can it even be close at this point?
I'm not saying he doesn't really believe it. I just don't know out loud. You and I both know the president well. He exists loudly, and he grows anxious when he has an unexpressed thought. I'm not saying he doesn't really believe it. I just don't know.
Yeah, but so what? Like, that's even worse if he actually believes it. I mean, either he's a lying piece of shit that's forcing his reality on other people and willing to send an innocent man to jail rather than admit failure. And he's done this over and over again. Or he believes his own bullshit. Like, neither one of those things is good. He's definitely shouldn't be a leader. Jesus Christ, bro.
Now, the stakes are a lot higher for U.S. Attorney Pirro. You can't lie to a federal judge. If she can't prove her case, she was right to pull back. Because if you fool around with a federal judge...
Okay, so Jesus Christ. Like, of course she did. because she's not there to do anything but back Trump, which means she should be fucking taken away in handcuffs, right? I mean, like, it's not, but the problem is the Democrats pushed Joe Biden out there for years, pretending that the guy wasn't senile. So, I mean, the both parties are fucked beyond, any kind of, nothing can be retrieved or reversed, redeemed. Like, there's just, of course, this is like what's going to happen with a system like ours. I mean, the system has to collapse and people have to get better or, something else, try our luck with the dolphins or whatever it is, right? Raise some other species up, see if they can do better. But, people have to change or there's no point. Okay, so here's this.
I make good deals. Intel, I made $75 billion for the country. I didn't make for me, I made for the country.
Yeah, I don't do any grifting. Like, I just didn't sell an app to disclose early information so people can insider trade. If they give me $100,000, I might bullshit Truth Social. But here's the thing. Now, I don't want to pretend I know any more about this than the description to this 37-second video. All my information comes from the person who posted this video and described what's happening, and then Trump talking about it. So apparently Trump, and I could look it up with AI, but, who gives a shit? Because if it isn't this, it's something else. If it's, we know how Trump is. But Trump bought a bunch of Japanese yen, the currency of yen, and dumped billions of dollars in American, we hold dollars, we hold our own cash, as part of a, whatever it is. But he dumped a bunch of dollars into yen, which caused the dollar to lose value, a lot of value. And when that happens, all the prices go up because your dollar is worth less, right? So he just grabbed a bunch more inflation for you, right? He just put in more inflation on the dollar. And, after all the bullshit he's doing with Iran. And in that scenario, this is his talking about it.
Intel. I backed Intel. It's the hottest stock right now on the New York stock, on the various stock exchanges. So we made about $75 to $80 billion. And Japan wanted to, it was really more than anything else, it was a signal of friendship.
You've said that
the yen is weakening, and the dollar is doing great.
The yen is weakening and the dollar is doing great, so he dumped billions of dollars into the yen as a sign of friendship to drive your fucking dollar to lose value, to devalue your dollar. So the yen is weakening, and it's as a move to have friendship for Japan. Now, Japan isn't going to do anything for you, but might do something for Trump. That he's been such a good friend to them, like he's been such a good friend to Israel. Not a good friend to you, though. I mean, he just admitted it, right?
The fact is, our country is doing great. Everybody wants help from our
everyone wants help from our country, and we're giving them help at the price of the American taxpayer. But, they do nice things for Trump after he gives them help, so that's cool. So this is this fucking guy, right? This is this fucking guy. This fucking guy. Okay, so this gets contentious now. There's another 15 minutes. I don't know if I'll cover the whole thing, but let's watch this again. I want to watch it all without, I want to see the various. I've seen 3 clips of this thing. This, Dana Bash and RFK Jr. going after each other here. And, the Democrats are thinking that Dana Bash took it to RFK Jr. That's how dumb these fucking people are. And the right-wing people who are anti-Fauci and anti-COVID stuff and, appreciate some of RFK Jr.'s legitimate success at some of the health stuff he's pushed. Like, there has been some good things from him. Thinks that he's rolling her, even though he's showed it to be a complete shill to Trump and taint liquor to Trump and Israel. Like, there is no winners or losers here. There's no good guys and bad guys. But certainly, RFK Jr. has more credibility in terms of this, this stuff here. And Dana Bash is trying to go, be a shill for the pharmaceutical companies.
Official.
So how do you prepare then? How do you prepare for the next pandemic? I mean, that's literally part of your job now because experts think it's going to happen within the next 10 years.
Oh, wait, experts say it? Fucking, you mean the experts are saying it? Oh, my God. What are the experts saying? Said nobody ever. Like, fucking experts are always fucking wrong. Like, when they bring the experts on these shows, they're full of shit, right? They're fucking shills and they're disinformation agents. They're not experts. They're trying to fucking grift you just like Trump, right?
again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did virtually everything wrong the last time.
So what about now?
The principal thing that we need to do is we need to listen to what's happening to doctors on the ground. There are 15 million frontline physicians around the world. They're mainly now connected through the internet. We can tell on the front lines what's working and what's not. If we had listened to those doctors during the COVID pandemic, we would have saved potentially millions of lives. There were therapeutics out there that were working. There were doctors that were having no deaths from COVID and treating, in some cases, thousands of patients.
Yeah, it was alternative health stuff. Again, I'm not recommending anything, but almost all the medicines and pharmaceutical shit, there's very few healers that are allopathic doctors. And the ones that are just, you fucking pray for those people because they're fucked, right? Like, you have to open up to other modalities. I mean, it's really hard to be a healer and embrace the allopathic doctor model. First of all, it costs a fortune to get your education, and you spend, 4 years in college, 4 years getting your doctorate, right? Another 4 years to become a doctor. I think 4 or 5, depending on what you do. And then you have to be an intern for like 1 or 2 years. So it's like 10 years and you accumulate a shit ton of debt, and they don't give you basic training on nutrition, and, you're specialized to one part of the body. I mean, it's fucked. And so then you're on the clock to make money. The pharmaceutical companies start, offering you cushy gigs. I mean, you have to scam and do things for that. It's impossible to be a good healer, based in all that. There is some good stuff in allopathic medicine, but the system is so money-oriented and so corrupt, they get rid of all this stuff. And then you get the fucking pharmaceuticals and the operations and, the myopia of you're just looking at one part of the body and you being locked into that model. I mean, it's completely fucked, right? It's for you, it's for you. I don't give a shit. I'm not trying to talk you out of anything, but, it's a fucked up model, and it's and there's lots of scammers and shitty people in the new age. I mean, there's not a lot, unless you're willing to dive into it and do your own research and really figure out what's right for you, you're pretty fucked, right? No matter which way you turn.
And we weren't listening to them. Instead, we were doing the opposite. We were shutting them down. And then, Dana, the other thing that I would say
It's Dana, you fuck.
is that we need to protect our constitutional rights. That is the primary obligation
What
of
does
our
that
country.
mean?
Well, during COVID, we completely dismantled our constitutional rights. We began censoring people in violation
Okay, but
of the First Amendment.
but I'm not, you're
if
saying
you
what
wanna-
not to do. I'm asking what to do.
Well, she did say he said protect your constitutional rights. Like, what, like, you suck. Like, that's, it's one thing to be a shill, but like, that's just total dishonesty. He said protecting the constitutional rights because you fucks that suck over at CNN and mainstream media and pharmaceutical shills made it so I couldn't say what was working for me. I couldn't tell people what was working for me the 3 times I got COVID. And I had a shit ton of information about alternative health and things. Not that it was going to work for other people, because I don't know that. But at least let people have understanding that there's information out there. YouTube had to shut that shit down. You couldn't criticize the vaccine. You couldn't say anything about any of these things that was happening. Even doctors and professionals who disagreed with the administration's shitty position. I played the meme the other day, my compilation of all these people that were wrong about this and said all these things, right? And you guys are proven wrong. And she just fucking, of course CNN would love to censor people. And you want to move away from that. So,
but I want to talk
Well,
about.
that's something to do. That is the number one priority. We protect the Constitution. The Constitution was written.
Forgive me, but you're talking about rights, and I'm asking about a potential public health crisis that is coming.
forgive you? Forgive you for what? For being a shill? Because he is saying something, because it's sharing information so people know what their options are. And not censoring people and fucking blackballing them and make them like villains. Like, it's an epidemic of, it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated, which is what Joe fucking shitting in his pants Biden said.
But I do want to,
And one of the mistakes we made in the last time was suppressing those rights so people weren't being heard. The doctors who were saying you're doing it wrong We're being marginalized and vilified.
Yeah,
And
because again, I really want to move on.
You really want to move on? I bet you fucking do. I bet you do, cunt. I bet you fucking want to move on.
But
yeah, of
you were
course
saying
wanna
you were
move on
yes,
because
I
you were
do.
part of the
You know, my brother went to a spiritual gathering that he started dating a woman from work. It was a whole fucking mess. You know, that's not important. But there was a master charge. A third master came to America every summer. And my brother started working at the VA counseling vets. And he was 3 credits away from having his undergraduate in psychology or something. You know, he wasn't a licensed counselor, but they let him, based on his credentials and only being 3 credits away from doing what he was doing, they let him be the counselor because he was a Vietnam vet himself. And so he would go to these places, powwows, and find guys, and people would come into the VA. And he and this coworker who he started dating started doing the meditation. She was a Christian. That was the whole thing. But they came to the gathering, but they had to leave. They only got a certain amount of time off. And it was a federal job. And my brother felt like it was wrong to leave. It was rude to leave, master charge. He talked himself into staying. And they fired him. They fired him and the woman. And my brother filed a wrongful lawsuit. And it was based in freedom of religion. And there was a period of time my brother was on the phone with the judge and his boss. And the judge said, you see to the boss that this violates Mr. Romano's and this other woman's freedom to religion. And the guy said, no, I'm on that side. I'm a Christian. And my brother was telling me this story, and he goes, he said, I think the spirituality stuff is helping because there's this long pause, and the judge said, are you still on the line, Mr. Romano? And he said, I would have said in the past, I bet your ass I'm on the line. The guy just fucked himself, right? Like, he didn't understand that other religions also have freedom of religion, and my brother got, I think, $25,000 whatever years ago in a settlement. And that's this kind of thing here, right? Whatever.
problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was absolute.
Let's go back.
I'm asking about a potential public health crisis that is coming. But I do want to
And one of the mistakes we made in last time was suppressing those rights so people weren't being heard. The doctors who were saying you're doing it wrong were being marginalized and vilified.
Yeah,
and
because again, I really want to move on.
I bet your ass you want to move on.
But
yeah,
you were saying yes, I
were
do.
part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was.
She keeps on saying shit like that. No, I wasn't part of the problem. No, I'm not being silly or whatever she says later on. CNN and MSNBC wanted people to be censored. They wanted to censor the internet. They loved what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden attacked all the social media platforms and then all this stuff. And it was, clear violation of the freedom of speech and other rights. And CNN wanted that because they can't compete, right? And they're big pharma shills.
Absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing your
Mr.
job.
Secretary,
your job
is
a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
yes,
you weren't doing that. You were beating up
My
on
job
people
is
who
also
were dissenting.
No.
Exactly. He said fear of skepticism. Fear of, the being skeptical of the official story. You're supposed to not accept, we agree with everything Fauci and Biden and Trump are saying. We're just going to go along with it. And that's what they've done. Like, not just, they're not doing that with Trump now, but they've done it with Biden.
Okay, you want to sit here and attack me, or do you want to have conversations about public health? I'm not attacking you. I'm asking questions about how to prevent the next pandemic.
Question, and I'll tell you.
That's what I'm trying to do.
No, she's not trying to do that. You're saying let's move on when he answers the questions you don't want him to.
But I also don't want to use this interview to allow you to say things that aren't entirely true. You're talking about therapeutics, fine. It is also factually true that the COVID vaccine worked. The COVID vaccine prevented deaths. There is data upon data upon data.
Yeah, come on, bro. The data from the fucking vaccine companies that said that they didn't have any time to test it. They said they had to roll. That woman who was a spokesman for Pfizer said there was no time to test it. We were moving at the speed of science. They didn't have the data to fucking do that, and they don't have the data post COVID, right? So none of the things that they promised. COVID fucking mutated itself out of existence, right? Basically, and people adapted to it.
Talk about the measles, please, because this is something that is happening as we speak. The
You think
cases
the
in the
COVID
U.S.
vaccine protected children?
I think that what I have talked to scientists and doctors
Talk to
about.
scientists. Can you show me one study
Yes, I can.
that shows that?
Okay, wait, she doesn't have a study there. You don't have any fucking studies. Why are you combing through your paper, bro?
I can.
Children were protected by the COVID vaccine.
I can tell you that there are.
That vaccine did more good than harm to children. Can you show me one study that shows that?
I can tell you that when it comes to the vaccine, there have been studies that show that because of vaccine disinformation, there could have been 100 to 200,000 lives in the U.S.
I'm glad I'm watching it the whole clip, like the progression of it deteriorating. She's getting fucking rolled here, and she's getting rolled because, whatever Kennedy's weird shit is and whatever his bullshit is about stuff, he's a good debater, and he's good at reading science, and like he's good at these scientific studies, and he's read the scientific studies, and she clearly hasn't. At least it seems like he has. I don't know if he has. But he says over and over again, remember there's this guy, Peter fucking Halitosis, whatever his name is. He's a fucking fat loser with a bow tie. And he was like, obviously not a healthy guy. And he went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan fucking rolled him. And then he said, why don't you debate RFK Jr.? And the guy didn't want to do it. And some people Elon Musk and other people put up money, like millions of dollars to say that the guy could debate RFK Jr., and he wouldn't do it. He's like a healthcare guy. And he said, well, he should debate Fauci, and Fauci said, no, you should debate him. And RFK Jr. challenged them both to debates, and they didn't want to debate him. And the debates were going to bring up scientific studies and talk about them. And they didn't want that to happen because they were operating on you being a dumb fuck, all of us being a dumb fuck in terms of our ability to read scientific reports. And who wants to read that shit? There's taking scientific data, which you can completely game and completely twist, and you can fuck it up. And then if you do take good scientific data, you can then interpret it. And that's the thing. Fauci and these other guys they're out there interpreting the scientific data for you, and they do it in a way that's dishonest, right? And she doesn't have the ability to do that. So she was told these talking points, and it might work for dumb fuck Democrats, but everyone else is like, oh my God, you're getting fucking rolled here. Like she's trying to close the conversation, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction.
Saved, but because people didn't get the vaccine, that's why. I'm not saying that it entirely.
Let me finish. You are saying something that you cannot show me a single study.
I am not saying nonsense.
That's one of my favorite part. I am not saying nonsense. That's definitely my favorite part.
You cannot show me a single study.
I am not saying nonsense.
You are talking what somebody told you.
Excuse me.
And you cite me the study. What study?
No, what studies are you talking about? You're
show me your study, and I'll show you my study.
Talking about studies that actually don't exist. I want to talk.
You're talking about studies that don't exist? How do you fucking know that? How can you possibly know if he's got studies that don't exist? You're talking about studies that don't exist? What studies are you talking about? Well, what studies are you talking about? People who are on the left, she's getting rolled here. These dumb fucks who pretend that,
About.
Cite me the study that you're talking about.
I am not here to defend.
Studies, cite me the study.
This is not productive. I am not here to defend all of the. Let me
You're
finish.
talking nonsense. You're making assertions you can't support, and then when I call you on them, you're telling me that I'm arguing.
Okay.
With
Do you want to talk about assertions that you can't support? I'll get there in a second.
I'll get there in a second. I'm going to fuck you over. I got shit in here where you've said things that are hypocritical. You're being a hypocrite. I've got them right in here and somewhere in my notes with these multiple studies I can't cite.
Let me just say, for the record, that I am not saying that the entire way that the COVID reaction was accurate. It was.
Yeah, it's not your job to say that, cunt. You're a reporter. You're not here to fucking tell us whether you're here to put out the information in an objective way. You're supposed to give both sides of the story. You're supposed to be skeptical of fucking scientists that can be bought and pharmaceutical companies that run a model where bad health, they look at their people as customers, trying to get people hooked on their fucking shitty drugs with the multiple side effects. The last big thing before COVID, the pharmaceutical companies did was the opioid epidemic and fentanyl that they produced, which had a disastrous effect. Do no fucking harm. They do harm all the fucking time because it's for-profit medicine. You're not here to tell us they did a fucking great job. We all fucking know it. You're here to just give the information in a factual way, which you're not doing. And you didn't do. And you push for censorship of anybody who was. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not here to defend the drug companies. Of course you are. What else reason would you have to exist if it wasn't for that, right?
It was a scary time, and people made mistakes. Absolutely.
You
Let
were
me finish.
They didn't make mistakes.
People.
Why are you saying that?
Because that was the job of CNN.
Okay.
Was to
Fuck this.
put
Okay,
the
stop.
chyrons up about
Okay,
how
stop.
many people are
Okay, stop. Stop saying those words. Listen to this. That's a great exchange here.
That the COVID reaction was accurate. It was a scary time, and people made mistakes. Absolutely.
You
Let
were
me finish.
scaring people.
Why are you saying that?
Because that was the job of CNN.
Okay.
Was to put
Okay,
the
stop.
chyrons up.
Okay,
about
So you're being a Trump right here, right? We all know it was your job to scare people. It was your idea to force people to get vaccinated. It was your idea to pitch for the fucking pharmaceutical company that have, as reporters, don't you think it's a little suspicious that and we couldn't even say these words. My video would be taken down. This video would be taken down like 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, before I even made it. Because you couldn't say anything about the pharmaceutical company. So first, you can't sue pharmaceutical companies. You can't sue and you couldn't sue them over the vaccines too as well. That was part of the deal. But that's, they have this thing called the vaccine court, where if you sue a pharmaceutical company and you can prove vaccines damaged you, they put a pool of taxpayer dollars, so you have to take a fund of your money, and they'll give you some settlement of that. It's always a bullshit settlement, and the government and the fucking judges and the lawyers are all against you because of it. And they're, so that's bullshit. Like that should not exist. You should be able to sue every fucking company, especially ones that are healthcare, that do damage all the time with their bullshit pharmaceuticals, and they have such a bad fucking history record, right? But the other thing about it was there was a media smear campaign when Joe Biden came out and said, we now have a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I showed you this thing recently, my whole thing about all the things that were said. Joe Biden said a bunch of these things, which proved to be completely false. First they said the vaccine would stop people from getting COVID. And then they said, well, no, it won't do that, but it'll stop you from getting it severe. Well, then they said, well, no, you might get a severe case, but you won't go to the hospital. Well, you might not go to the hospital, but you'll fucking, you won't die. And then it's like, well, you might die, but at least you'll be better than like fucking dying from it without it, right? So every level, it turned out to be bullshit. All their claims turned out to be bullshit. Putting people on respirators, all the things that they did. And you can say, well, it was a scary time and people made mistakes. It isn't a scary time. And the fear came from, the panic button to get everybody to take the fucking jab and to do the things that they did and close down the economy. Those were all intentional. There's a plot, right? There's a conspiracy. And you're a part of it. And she doesn't want to admit she's part of the evil. Like they're on the wrong side of the evil. And so, in minimizing all the fucking negative things that happened, right? And so if they lied about all those things and they pressured people, people lost their jobs and couldn't, do certain things unless they took the vax. People who didn't want to take the vax felt pressured to do it. All the stuff with Kyrie Irving, all that shit. And now Fauci taking the Fifth Amendment and all these things turning out to be true. And you're still out here pretending you have a fucking point of view. You have a side. Like you don't have anything, right? You're a fucking shitbag cunt, right? Like the rest of these people in mainstream media.
How many people are
We were
dying?
trying to
get people
we
to
were
comply.
listening to the leaders in this country, including the president, who had a daily press conference explaining what was going on and trying to listen.
Were you listening?
I want to talk to
scientists,
measles.
Actually, were you reading the,
The
science
measles,
yourself?
the measles.
You're reading the science yourself, which is what you're supposed to do. We were listening to the leaders. You don't fucking. That's not your job as a reporter to listen. We were listening to the leaders and telling you what they said. We were listening to the leaders and telling you what they said. That's not your job. Your job is to fact check them. Like you fact check Trump every 2 seconds, but you wouldn't fact check Biden, and not just fact check them and find out what the pharmaceutical companies were saying about their own poisons and their own bullshit. Like fact check them. Look into other points of view. Look into the skeptical point of view. Right.
Measles cases in the U.S. just reached a 35-year high. The second record-breaking year in a row, 93% of these cases are among the unvaccinated. The outbreak has happened on your watch, and even before becoming a.
Is this What are you talking about? U.S. measles cases reach a 35-year high. You mean 2,000 fucking cases of measles that doesn't kill anybody, that in many ways helps boost your immune system? See, part of the thing is natural immunity. That's the other thing. Everybody who got COVID had natural immunity, which is always better than a vaccine. Because vaccine, you're trying to trigger an immune response. And so, with putting shitty stuff in your body, like it's, again, I'm not fucking telling people what to do. I don't give a shit. But I'm not doing them. Like I'm a vaccine never person. Because, it puts, I trust my immune system. The first thing that happened when COVID came out, I said it's time, for me personally, to work on my immune system and do the things I need to do. And then, you behave in a way where you don't do things like eat sugar and candy and fucking, drink things and eat things that are high in things that take down your immune system. Sugar takes down your immune system. You have to watch your diet. You have to, behave in a way. That's one of the things I ate an ice cream cone. I didn't think I had any chance of even coming in contact with COVID. But, it was a weird fucking thing that happened. Like one person I had contact with outside my family, his wife was a nurse. There was a guy building our barn. He had built our barn and he came back to check on something. And we talked for a few minutes. And he later came back and said he got COVID when we did. And he got it from his wife. And so he gave it to me. And then, I gave it to my wife. And then all that shit happened, right? But, the ice cream was a factor. And we barely ate ice cream. And, it was just a thing we did. We stopped somewhere and had some kind of thing. Like, I don't know what it was. And then, I felt my throat getting sore, and I woke up the next day with cooking COVID. But anyways, they pushed all this shit, right? And it's her job and the job of reporters to make sure that when, you don't buy the thing right off the bat, but when the thing starts collapsing, their story starts collapsing, you report on it. And she never did that because they're fucking pharmaceutical shills.
HHS secretary for years. You have been one of the leading voices questioning the efficacy of vaccines. Do you accept some responsibility for this measles outbreak?
Is that what you're going to talk about after Fauci got fucking, Fauci just got fucking rolled. Fauci fucking pleaded the fifth for 100 times and wouldn't answer one fucking question. And he has a fucking, he was given a pardon by Joe Biden. And you're worried about 2,500 measles cases? Like that's what, cunts say what? Right?
Absolutely not. First of all, this is an international outbreak. So, and we're doing better at handling it than any country in the world. Mexico has 15 times the amount of measles per capita that we have. Canada has 4 times the amount of measles. England has 2 times the amount of measles. Did I cause those measles outbreaks?
You're the most famous.
Did I cause 137,000 cases?
You're the most famous vaccine skeptic on the planet.
Let me tell you, because
again, don't talk about vaccines like they're a good thing. Vaccines, what they do is they put oftentimes synthetic compounds, things that are bad for you, right, into your system. So your body is, and they're supposed to, it's supposed to trick your body into producing an immune response that works for COVID. And so it's specific to the disease. When COVID started to mutate, the vaccines, that should have that were supposed to work a certain way weren't going to work because COVID changed and the immune system had to respond. But your body would come up with its own immune response. And there's certain things like dengue fever where it's a virus, and the way that your body handles viruses is it heats up and fries the virus, so you get a fever, right? Dengue fever. But the dengue bug, which comes from mosquitoes, is other people have had it, and the mosquito bites one person with it and then bites somebody else, and so gives it to that way. That's at least how they say you get it. It is not. It's temperature. It's heat tolerant. So you have to get your body up to 106 degrees, which is life threatening, for your body to kill the virus. But in terms of immune responses, your body puts out immune response, and there's some things that your body doesn't detect, and some things that are hard for your body to put out immune response. But that wasn't happening with COVID. All of us who beat COVID had an immune response, and then they wanted us to take that shitty vax on top of it. The other thing is, babies don't have a immune response. Like if you understand, like when a cow is born, they have this stuff called colostrum, just like with a human being. And the mother's milk is colostrum the first couple days. And that's where the baby and the cow gets his immune response. And I think, and I'm not saying this scientifically, it's just 100% my theory, is that you can't be born with immune response because, genetically, unless you could get it from your mom somehow, the immune response doesn't know what kind of, if you had just some generic immune system when you came in, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be up to date with what's going on in the world, right? Like for example, a cow will lick their nose, and people who milk cows will kiss their cow, and the cow will lick its nose and then get some of your germs. And, again, this isn't some scientific thing, but this is what people do. We used to have dairy cows, and then the cow will, because it's fighting off those germs that it's gotten from you. Cows have a very good immune system, and they would produce antibodies in their milk for their babies that would be based in that immune system response. So when you're drinking that milk, it will help you, because like when the cow licks its baby and the baby has serious, certain germs or whatever, it'll produce an immune response so that the baby can, benefit from it. So, the mom produces this colostrum, based in whatever's going on with her body, partially. And then, they sell colostrum in powder form and things like this. And that's where the mammals get their immune system. And so babies start then developing an immune system. They don't have one. And the colostrum gives them a start, but they don't have one for like a year. And so vaccines won't work with them. And there was some nurse who was admitting this. It was a video that went around and then got, taken off the internet. But she admitted that, she was laughing about it. And she said the only reason we make parents vaccinate their kids is we want them to get in the habit of doing it. And so they're giving this baby fucking toxic vaccines that can't help the baby because the baby doesn't have an immune system. And oftentimes it has a various effects, including autism and things like that. So that's, my view on the whole thing, based on all the bullshit that's out there, right? And her pushing this thing like vaccines are some wonderful fucking thing when they're clearly not. It's bad science. And again, I'm not telling people what to do, not to get vaccinated. I do not care, and I'm not advising anybody or suggesting anything. But I'm not going anywhere near any of that shit, especially now when they're depopulating. Because even if the vaccines were good, not now they're not. They don't. They want to depopulate because they have to. Depopulation is part of the future. They have robots and AI, and fucking the population is too resource heavy. They have too many fucking worthless dumb fucks out there that don't have a purpose, and they want to depopulate, and they want to control where the population is depleted from, right? And that's what they're doing, and and so there's different versions of the vaccine. And they would send like the shitty stuff to certain places, poor people, whatever it is, undesirables, because that's what they do, right? This is the fucking control system that we have.
Actually, Anthony Fauci in his diaries answers the question about why we're having a measles outbreak right now. The reason we're having a measles outbreak because of the COVID lockdowns, because people children during that period did not get vaccinated. And in his diaries, He says this is going to cause massive outbreaks of measles and more children. He says this are going to die. Let me finish, because you could accuse me of something.
Right.
Now let me.
No, I didn't. I asked you a question.
Yeah, in an accusatory way. Come on, don't be. Can you be less cunty? We need 10% less cunty from you. I mean, actually, no, be more cunty. I want to call you. I mean, I like it when you're cunty, so it suits what I'm doing here. Fine, be more cunty. Be 20% more cunty.
Yeah, let me give you the answer. He says in his diaries, more children are going to die from measles because of these lockdowns than COVID. So if you want to know, and that age group that should have gotten the MMR when they were 18 months and didn't get it, they're the ones being infected. The people in this country, and we have stopped the outbreaks at record speed in South Carolina, in Texas, in Utah, in Virginia. We've done better than any country in the world. I dispatch immediately the epidemic intelligence services to those states. I get on the phone with the governor and we stop them in their tracks. Nobody else has been able to do that.
You have a bully pulpit.
Let me tell you just one last thing.
Go ahead.
The communities that are suffering
I want to hear her bully pulpit comment.
from measles are almost all religious communities that just don't vaccinate. The Mennonites have not vaccinated since 1796, since Edward Jenner invented the smallpox.
Okay, so, the thing about it is, again, I don't, like I said, I've given my opinion about vaccines. But the other part about this is, we live in a society where there are a lot of weak fucking people that shouldn't be alive, physically, mentally, whatever. The society, as, shitty as it is in some ways and unfair as it is, it helps weak people. A society like ours, and, part of that is like tolerance to cold, tolerance to heat, medications that keep people alive when they would otherwise die from illnesses and other things, right? I told the story, I covered a story yesterday where a woman, a surrogate mom, was fighting the couple that hired her because they wanted her to get an abortion because the baby had a heart defect or, a heart issue that, could easily lead to its death before it was 5, immediately when it was born. It might live till it's 18 or whatever, but, it was going to be a lifelong problem. And so, again, I don't believe in abortion, but, because it's murder, it's the soul is a soul, because, soul creates the body in my, belief system. And that happens at the moment of conception. But, there's a lot of weak people out there that, if you're going to have that baby, you have to accept that that baby's going to die. Just like there's miscarriages and things, there's things that happen. And some people are just weak and, their genetics shouldn't be passed on. That's part of the way this thing works in every other species but ours. And so this idea that, you got to save everybody's life, that's bullshit when you're trying to kill people. When the world's overpopulated and you're trying to save weak fucks, right? Like there's a lot of dumb fucks and weak fucks out there, and they're trying to take themselves out, but our system won't let them, right? In one way or another, because it's just they're marked for death. Like some people are going to die. Some people are going to die in childbirth. Some babies are going to die. They're not going to make it. Like and it's sad. It sucks when it's yours. Yeah, or whatever your involvement is in that, and it's sad. And that's and life is sad, right? We're all dying at some point. You're going to lose a loved one. If you love somebody, if you have a life without love, that's a real tragedy. But if you love people and you're a loving person, somebody that you love is going to die. Somebody you admire, somebody there's going to be pain and suffering in your life because of death. Like it's part of life. You can't fucking change that.
Vaccine. It's hard to blame that on me as much as you want to blame it.
No, I don't want to blame you. I'm asking you because you have a very powerful voice on these issues for people who are skeptical. Let me finish. Let me finish.
And I've never questioned the efficacy of the MMR vaccine.
Okay, let me finish.
What
I want you to do is please use your bully pulpit to right now, as we're getting close to back to school, are you willing to say to parents who have not vaccinated their kids that they should vaccinate their kids for measles because it is safe and it will help them?
That's your fucking takeaway from this cunt? I knew this. I heard this before. Like, holy shit. Like, after all this stuff, and he just said that Fauci claimed that these kids were going to die because they weren't getting vaccinated. But that's where you want to go with this, right? What the fuck are you talking about? It's 2,500 people. I mean, if every one of those people die and they're not, like, let's, there's 2,500, like, I mean, it's very few measles cases, right? And so, you know, ChatGTP, how many measles cases were there in the United States so far in 2026 and also in 2025? It's almost nothing, and that's what you want to fuck compared to the COVID bullshit. So, in 2026, there's been 1,900 measles cases, and in 2025, there's 2,263. No, 2,288. So that's fucking nothing. All those people could die. It would mean nothing in terms of our overall population. Our population's growing. It's not declining. There should be a balance. There should be, as many deaths as there are births, to where it's like, there's no growth at all. That's ideal. Like, you get up to a certain point where we're overpopulated. It should go the other way. And once it goes the other way, everything's going to change. I've talked about this. But holy shit, that's where you're taking this? Like, it's nothing. What the fuck? I guess she did get at least 10% more cunty.
Save their children's lives.
We tell people on my websites, my public
Right now,
pronouncement, I'll
look
say
into the
it right
camera.
now that people,
Look at the camera. Fuck you. He's not your, like I would say, I'm not your little fucking monkey.
parents should get their children vaccinated for measles.
Dance, monkey vance.
A measles vaccine is effective. It stops measles in about 97% of the cases.
The link between autism and vaccines.
He certainly does.
Let's go a little bit back for
Now, vaccines and autism. Is that true?
Vaccinated for measles. A measles vaccine is effective. It stops measles in about 97% of the cases. But people should get vaccinated.
Can I ask you, the Wall Street Journal reported that the president is pressuring you to conduct studies probing the link between vaccines and autism. Is that true?
Did you say probing the link?
I'm just quoting the Wall Street Journal, that the president wants you to go further to probe the link between autism and vaccines.
He certainly does.
Okay. Now, have you talked to him about medical research that have studied this for 25 years and found no link between autism and vaccines? And this is my question here, because I don't want to live.
Okay, so if you're not familiar with this, the good part of RFK Jr., when he went on the Joe Rogan show and other places, he talked about how he was doing environmental work. He was an environmental lawyer. And one of my biggest things is protecting the environment, because people are worthless. And so don't fuck up the world for future versions of yourself and for your children and grandchildren, for future human beings. Let's limit the damage. Like, it should be like, all right, we're fucked. We're miserable piece of shit. Like, let's not do any more damage. But Trump is trying to take things off to save, the endangered species. He's a big corporate fuck. They're going to do all kinds of shit, that's going to be devastating to the environment. There's already a lot of shit that's been done. So Kennedy, who was, backing the piece of shit Trump, at one point was an environmental lawyer. And he had all these women that came up to them. These mothers saw their kids after they got vaccinated. A lot of these mothers and probably some of their fathers and siblings and other people saw it. There's a consciousness just left these kids. You could see in their eyes there was a light on. And they got vaccine and they just went dull. And they just changed. And they saw them change. Like, they saw their kids, even at the age of being toddlers, melt down after vaccines. And they knew it was the vaccines that caused it. And many of these women came over to RFK Jr. and asked him to look into it. And when he looked into it, he found what everyone else finds, that the insurance company, the fucking pharmaceutical companies are covering up this whole bullshit, as is the government and everybody else. And certainly the media, right? And so, you can't talk to, going on a show with Dana Bash and these other fucking people who are bought and sold by Big Pharma. It's silly.
Litigate that. My question is, why not, because you are HHS secretary now,
Shook her head no.
why not study what could cause autism, which scientists do believe starts with fetal brain development? Why not do some studies on that, whether you're an environmental lawyer, whether there are environmental factors?
No, it's vaccines. Like, it's vaccines. Which he is studying that. Because it was vaccines. There's a guy, and I forget the guy's name. He was a doctor in England. And he found that it fucked up the kid's guts. And of course, the gut is responsible for your vagus nerve. That's essential to your gut and your vagus nerve and in your brain. There's you have 3 intelligence centers, and your gut has all these nerve endings, your heart, and then your brain, and they're all important, obviously, to your existence. And the vagus nerve is a 2-way nerve that sends information up to the brain and up to the heart, and information back down. And 80% of the information goes from your gut up the vagus nerve to your brain and your heart. And so that is like real important, because your gut is like, with all the things your gut goes through and stress and, all the responses you get, all the fear responses, all the shit, people have. And that fucks people. I've, started doing research on this stuff. And so that affected that. Like, that's why all these kids eat like white foods and they have digestive issues, the autistic kids. And this guy proved, his name was Andrew something, Wakefield, I believe. And he proved that these vaccines caused it in England, and they blackballed the guy. And he had legitimate scientific study. They called him a quack, and they destroyed the motherfucker. And, and he proved to be right over and over again. So fuck all these people, right? I mean, do your own fucking research.
That go into contributing to a predisposed genetic situation.
Well, let me say this first. We're doing all those things, and that's one of the ways that we found Tylenol. There's 73 studies out there and linked Tylenol exposure during later pregnancy and during the perinatal period to autism onset. But you are wrong when you say that this issue has been studied. It has been studied, and you're rolling your eyes, Dana. But
I am, because I don't want to have you use our air to say this. There have been more than 40 studies involving 5.6 million people to conclude there is no link between vaccines and autism. This is the head of the Committee of Infectious Diseases for the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Yeah, which is the pharmaceutical shills, right? Like fucking, if you were a reporter, you'd say, all right, does this guy get money from Big Pharma? Does his agency get money from Big Pharma? Like NIH is 100% funded by Big Pharma. It's funny how they always agree with Big Pharma. Fuck, like 5% more cunty.
Now let me tell you what the Institute of Medicine says, which is the National Academy of Sciences, which is the ultimate arbiter on vaccine safety, and which it does not have an interest in this debate. It says that none of the 8 vaccines that are administered during the first 6 months of life have ever been studied for a relationship to autism. It found 2 studies, one on the DTP vaccine, that showed that it does cause autism, and one on the hepatitis B vaccine that again suggests that it does cause autism. The Institute of Medicine dismissed those 2 studies because they were based on CDC's database. The studies that you're referring to are all for one vaccine, the MMR vaccine, or one ingredient, thimerosal.
So you are actually looking at, you're starting new studies to try to link autism, but you're also telling me—
I'm not trying to link autism to anything. I'm trying to find out, why has autism gone
Are you
from
also
less
trying?
than one-
Are you
why has
also trying to
autism
find
gone-
out how it interacts with people's DNA, what's predisposed to
Where are you going with this, fucking Dana? You do anything to fucking protect your pharmaceutical fucking taint. You're such a taint licker.
to have an autistic child? Are you doing both?
Yeah, but Dana, you probably don't understand this because you're not a scientist, but genes
you're not
don't
either.
genes don't cause epidemics.
I understand. Genes,
They can provide a
epidemics.
vulnerability,
A
but you
gene
need
provides
environmental
That's
exposure.
what I'm asking. Are you studying the environmental
We're looking
exposure?
at all the different environmental exposures, but your statement.
Okay, so I don't know what fucking RFK Jr. is going to do on this. I don't know what's going to come out of this. I don't have any faith in him. But, it went from in 1972, 1 in 10,000, and to now where it's like 1 in 30, 1 in 26, depending where you are. It affects, I think, boys much more than girls. There's much more boys that have it. And, when CDC was in charge of that, right? The CDC was in charge of the autism explosion. And they haven't done anything about it. Like that was on their watch, and they didn't do shit about it. Like this is one of the first things I said about it. Like that's just one thing. All right, if you're going to say it's not vaccines, then what is it? And she's coming to him and saying, well, why don't you figure out what it is? Fuck you. We know what it is. We know at least partially what it is. And of course now with the internet and Wi-Fi and all that other shit, which we know, all those things cause harm. It's just a matter of like being more subtle. All the energies, electricity, the whole neurasthenia I've talked about so much in various videos, that all this stuff that's out there, information about how electromagnetic energy affects people. And so, but she's not going back to the many years since 1972, one CDC after another, director and companies and pharmaceutical companies, and they've never found out what causes autism. And now you're saying, well, why don't you figure it out? Like, why didn't they figure it? Why didn't you ask Fauci about this or any of these other people? Oh yeah, because you're a cunt, right?
You have been fooled. Your statement that this has been studied is not true. It's categorically not true. Not for any of this stuff.
It is considered.
Considered by who?
By every scientist who has studied this.
That is
name one. Name fucking one of them.
Not true. I can give you hundreds of scientists who have looked at this.
So on the one hand, do you understand why people aren't getting?
National Academy of Sciences. What greater authority
do you understand why people are not getting measles vaccines? Because they're hearing you say that it could cause autism.
You're trying to change the subject.
I'm not. It's very much related.
Show me one of the studies that's been done on the first 8 the vaccines during the first 6 months of life. You will not find them. The National Academy of Sciences.
So if that's the case, then why are you telling people to get the measles vaccine?
Because that is one of the vaccines that has been studied.
Okay.
It's the only one that has been studied.
Do you want people to get the MMR vaccine?
Yeah, I said that already.
Okay, so
I know you're flustered now, and it is.
I'm not flustered at all. I am frustrated.
Have not been honest.
The reason I'm frustrated is because you are the HHS. You are the HHS secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy.
That's not your job as a reporter to fucking make him speak in a way that causes people to get vaccinated. And you're saying that you weren't a part of the fucking problem and the fear-based bullshit. Like, I mean, in this interview, you said all that shit. No, we weren't part of it. You're doing a job a reporter's not supposed to do. You're supposed to. You haven't been able to fact check the guy once in this whole interview. I mean, other than the fact that he talked shit about Trump when he was telling the truth, and now he can't because he's a taint licker. But the rest of this shit, for the rest of the interview, it's been all this other stuff, right? I covered that part the first 5 minutes of my last video, where he had tweeted something about Trump, which was true, and now he won't, own up to that. But other than that, you've got fucking nothing. And you have no scientific studies. You have no. Why don't you bring a scientist on there?
In this country, and it is something that causes problems for people when there is not anything.
Let me ask you something.
Peter Hotez is his name. Why don't you bring Peter Hotez on there and have him bring all the scientific data that he has? And why don't you bring him in so that you could turn to a scientist that you say studied it or is pro vaccines or pro this vaccine or all of them, the COVID vaccine, and then have him bring the science with him.
See your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and it is
like a parrot.
This is the best part. Okay, there isn't those studies because you can't name one of them. Like you just heard that. You've heard people say there's studies. Like that's not even close to the truth. But you haven't read the studies. Like we all know you haven't read the studies because you can't name them. You can't name any of it. Like you just say people say this or scientists say this.
You're repeating it like a parrot.
So are you. What do you mean? So is he?
I actually read the science. Let's come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not
all
debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the masks. The masks were so fucked up. You wear a mask for other people, and they wear masks for you. Remember that bullshit?
Transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again
Yes.
to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job to.
That's your job. Guess what? That's your job. Oh my God, she is fucking getting rolled here. This is really.
Lying about everything, about masks, about the social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again
Yes.
to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job to talk to people.
Your job is to
Am I
tell the
allowed to
truth
talk?
to the American
Yes,
public.
yes. And my job
And
is
to
to
be-
get as
and
much
to-
information as I
and to
can. And what we
maintain
were doing,
a posture
what we were
of
doing.
fear.
With as much information as you can, you push for censorship of everything that wasn't coming from the provenly fucking scandalous and murderous pharmaceutical fucking industry. All right, now she's gone the full cunt. She's gone full cunt.
Skepticism.
What we
toward
were
government
doing
authority.
in COVID and still with regard to these vaccines is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And so
What about other things? What about things that are outside your bullshit scientific model? Because there are things. There's intuition. There's holistic medicine. There's all these other ways of gauging health. There's people knowing their own bodies. There's all kinds of different models and modalities of healthcare out there. Why it had to be this one thing?
what you are doing is causing
getting the best
information
science
to
from
be out there
somebody
that
who
is
was lying
not
to you.
accurate.
Who was lying to
The
you?
National Academy of Sciences, which you just cited, in November, said we support the statement that vaccines do not cause autism. This is the National Academy of Sciences that you just talked about.
Look at the National Academy of Science most recent report,
Okay.
and you'll see.
I want to ask you one other question because it's something that really did help Donald Trump get elected, and that is the MAHA movement and specifically the question of processed foods.
Of what?
Processed foods and the fact that people want to feel that their food is safe. My understanding is that you're pushing for reforms on food safety and ultra-processed foods that have been slowed, in some cases blocked, by people in the administration who are working on behalf of the industry. Is that true?
No, that is not true.
Yeah, fuck you. She got you, bro. she went full cunty for a while. She got you at the end, even though she's totally not. They're not telling you the truth about processed foods, which is good cause to fucking have. I mean, people are walking around in Walmart and fucking Costco and their supermarkets with shopping carts full of heart disease and cancer.
So you feel that you'll be able to get these reforms done without any problems?
I think the two big reforms that you're probably talking about is ultra-processed food definition
Exactly.
and the GRAS standards.
Yes.
And they've both gone through extensive interagency process. I'm very confident that we will get them both out there within probably a month.
Well, I'm sorry that this, and that's good news for people who are very moms, and I'm one of them, who are very worried about making sure that our kids eat food and we eat food.
And Fauci never once addressed this. So why be such a cunt to him when Fauci never once talked about foods? When he's talking about elderberry being fucking not working and shit like that, herbs, when he went on that Jennifer Gardner's fucking interview, all of it. Now he turned out to be a lying sack of shit. And you went after him harder than you never went after Fauci. And you never pressed Fauci in finding the real reason for autism or finding the real cause of COVID or for going after processed foods and other things that made people unhealthy, that set them up to be high risk obesity, childhood obesity, that set them up for high risk to be susceptible to COVID. Like, why go full cunt with him and not at all with fucking Fauci or any of these other people?
That is healthy. I'm sorry that this turned into a very contentious conversation, and my job is to try to get the best information out there. And
Come on, you mean the best information out there for your for shilling for pharmaceutical companies? Come on, bro.
it does concern me when you come in and say things that I
Your
take what you're saying
experts
have
don't
been
agree with.
Your experts, he got her again.
yeah, people who have scientific backgrounds, and who I know have tried to talk to you as well. Thank you for coming in. Up next, he helped lead the Biden administration's COVID response. Dr. Rajesh Shah joins me next.
Okay, so you're going to try to. I don't want to watch the other one, but that'd be great. All right, let me. I'm going to go for a walk. I'll come back and see if what the comments are to this. Okay, so I'm editing this, and the reason I said it was great, I didn't make that clear. She was bringing in a doctor, and I assume he was going to shit all over the interview that just happened, and without anybody to talk, to defend themselves or to defend the other side, and tell you all the things that Kennedy said, and fact check them and say this is wrong, and this is what us experts believe, all that bullshit. If I have time tomorrow, I'll take a look at it, but we'll see. I don't even know where it is, right? Where that interview is, because CNN doesn't put shit up on YouTube anymore. But anyways, I'm sure I can, I just sure that's what happened. Okay, so I just went outside. I did a little bit of work and went walk with my dogs. And I wanted to comment on this before I go out, and I want to cut some lawn. And I talked to my wife, who's not feeling good, and she'll be home in a little while, so we're probably going to watch early TV, which means I'll complete this video tomorrow. I already have a long voiceover here. And I want to add something about the ABA show on ESPN, on Amazon that was excellent, that I enjoyed. It actually goes with all that. So, but I want to say more about this because it's, I don't know, it was a lost issue because we couldn't talk about it. And that's the other thing. Like, first of all, when it needed to be talked about and people were passionate about it, we couldn't talk about it on social media. And so fuck everybody who has anything to say about that shit. Like, anybody who was a part about that, fuck them, right? Like, fuck them forever, fuck them. Like, it's just, just piece of shit, right? And it should have been talked about. But she ended the interview, and I'm going to get into these people who like her or think that she won. These people are all going to think that she rolled RFK Jr., that he lost it because, people have either they're liars or they have no ability to discern on both the left and the right. But she ended it with saying, as a mom, she wants to get processed foods out of her kids' diet, right? And so she's admitting that RFK Jr., and then she shits on him. She's shitty about it. But Trump's trying to block you on that. She's not like applauding him because there are a lot of these liberal moms who feed their kids well. They don't feed their kids that shit, right? Well, first of all, like all these liberal pieces of shit, when we get into it, liberalism is where a lot of the alternative medicine came from. It didn't come from right-wing people. Right-wing people weren't doing alternative medicine. Some of them were old-time hillbillies doing, herbal medicines. Yes, there's some of that. Some people who are, like Amish adjacent or Amish, or they're doing traditional medicines and things. But the majority of it the industry itself came from liberals, the Whole Foods people, eating organic foods. And it's a good thing the liberals did. Like, right-wing people don't want to give them credit for it, especially now that they're embracing it. Many right-wing people are embracing it. But they were the ones who came up with herbalism and all these different things. And because Trump and the right-wing people seem to be anti-vax people, they switched. I talk about this extensively in my voiceover about my ex and her being the most anti-vax person because, but she took the COVID vax, which is totally fucked, and I get into that. But all these liberal hippies, they went against their beliefs and they embraced mainstream pharmaceutical bullshit drugs, right? All the Democrats, all the liberals, and many of them, they still are feeding their kids foods that are not recommended by the CDC and the food pyramid, right? Like, this is what Dana Bash is talking about. Dana Bash. Instead of applauding Kennedy for at least trying, even if Trump's working against him and the food industry's working against him, applauding him for trying, she tries to shit on him. And he's done more with that than Fauci and Fauci and all these other people have done with it. And she said it's important to her. And it was important to a lot of the reporters there, but they couldn't talk about it because it was Kennedy, and they had already demonized Kennedy, even though he was a part of this Democratic liberal family, and he had done all kinds of great things for the environment. When Biden went after Kennedy because he didn't want to run against him, and he wouldn't primary anybody, they didn't do a primary because no one wanted Joe Biden to debate earlier than what he did against Trump, and they were they wanted to fucking somehow forced Kamala Harris on it, fucking the Democratic people. Nobody wanted her. Because of all that shit, right? Well, let me read this guy's comment here. Dana Bash pressed RFK Jr. on Trump's culpability for mishandling COVID and the misinformation he pushes about vaccines, and the segment wound down with him getting mad and barking at her like a rabid dog. Here's the full thing. Now, this guy posts anti-Trump shit, so I've seen some of his stuff before that I agree with. But like all these partisan pieces of shit, they never get the truth out. They just only get the truth when it's easy, when it's going after Trump. These journalists are either professional liars or simply arrogant and are being uninformed. Not everything is exposed. Hopefully they will face the consequences of their misinformation. Now, that wasn't there before. So I'm surprised that they switched the comments. RFK claims Trump never wanted to lock down the country, while here singing different tune in 2024. So they're getting him here. This is, I'm sure, the shitting on him here. I'm not going to read that whole comment. In the Lormy Morning Scroll, RFK Jr., Mark Wayne Mullen, Kash Patel, Doug Bergen, Hickseth, and Tom Blanchett, everything you look for, standard qualifications and competence seem completely absent. Freak show. This guy loves abusing animals, lying about vaccines, and throwing tantrums on television. He's 100% real MAGA man. You have to give him that. So, all these dumb fucks out here. Imagine having to lie like this on the open forum because you have no other options left but to gaslight. Now, I think he's talking about RFK Jr. because this is the kind of people that will watch this guy. Never forget, RFK Jr. was largely responsible for the 219 measles outbreak in Samoa that led to thousands of people infected, over 80 deaths, mostly children 4 and under. Yeah, was he? Like, fucking, you're not going to talk about Fauci and what he did with AIDS and all the shit he did. So anyways, these are these dumb fucks, right? So going back to what I was saying about, the food stuff. And so Dana Bash is acknowledging at the end of this thing that he is doing something good on food, right? Which means that she knows that he has done something positive. And again, and he's doing something that, like I said, CDC and Fauci and all these other agencies have pushed shitty food for years, which means that there is, and what's going on with Trump, that the food companies are trying to block RFK Jr., and they might be being successful, probably are, because Trump will take a buyout. Now, RFK Jr. said Trump was going to back him on vaccines, and then Pfizer came in and gave Trump $1 million, and Trump bailed on him, right? Because that's what, Trump, he said that in an interview. But she's acknowledging, as has many of her colleagues have acknowledged, that they're happy with the whatever they called that, movement, the food movement, whatever it is, MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. And she was saying, as a mom, she appreciates that. But if you know those foods are poisonous, and that Fauci, like I said, if they really gave a shit about your health, Fauci would sit outside a grocery store and knock the Twinkie out of your fat fucking your fat hands as you were walking out the store, and would be saying to people, don't eat this, don't eat that, right? And so she was talking about environmental factors and things that might cause autism. Well, malnutrition and obesity and all those things are a part of it, right? And so she's acknowledging that these people, by asking him that question at the end, failed. And asking him about, hey, why don't you go research other factors about autism, like why don't you get to the bottom of it? Then she's acknowledging the CDC since 1974 has failed because it's gotten worse every year. And so many things have happened on their watch, and they're not about health. And that big business can influence health policy, like she's saying that big food can go and go after his MAHA movement and Trump, and by bribing Trump and his people. And she's acknowledging that lobbyists have influence on your health, right? Things that are bad for you, and they find ways of making it so they don't make those things illegal, and don't verbalize the how bad this shit is for you. And so all of those things show that the healthcare system has failed, and her so-called experts and scientists haven't called any of this shit out, right? This largely came from the truth movement, Callie and Casey Means, who seem to be piece of shit now, who did those excellent interviews with Tucker Carlson about the food stuff. And they, work with RFK Jr. to start all this Maha movement. And it had a lot of backing from both the conservatives and the liberals. And now it's filtering out, it's petering out. Instead of saying, all right, we can at least get this one thing. We might not agree with this, some of RFK Jr.'s policies. But instead of going after like the food industry, all coming together in the mainstream media, the left-wing mainstream media that certainly doesn't feed their kids processed food shit, right? All those people know about healthcare stuff, alternative medicine. And they're talking about vaccines like they're God's gift to humanity. And so you can tell it's all bullshit. I mean, you always know it's bullshit. But even within their own video and all these dumb fucks that are commenting positively, they're ignoring the fact that, Kennedy, although he is a piece of shit and is an Israeli shill and taint liquor and, all the stuff that he's done wrong and of course, being a part of the debacle that is Trump, he has some merit to his arguments and he has some things that are going on that are truthful and good, and they refuse to acknowledge it. Anyways, I got to go out and finish my stuff outside, then I got one more voiceover to do, and then I'll, you know what the thing is. All right, so let's move over to that. Okay, so I already put the video up on Gratefullness Meditation channel. It only is going to get 100 views or so. For those people who are watching that exclusively there, they're going to miss out on this part, which is a part of the whole story. And I'll also put this in the Journey series. But I watched the Amazon show. It was like multi-episode documentary about the ABA. As a basketball fan, starting, as a little kid, but I don't remember too much about it. I remember my first favorite player was Dr. J. My older brother liked Dr. J. And he had just come to the Philadelphia 76ers, and the ABA had just folded in 1976. And I didn't know very much about the ABA, but there were still ABA basketballs around, and I really didn't understand the NBA. I was, in 1976, I was like 12 years old. And so 77. And so, like I have some memory of those. I watched some basketball games, but it wasn't very easy to watch basketball. Like they were only towards the end of the year playoffs, maybe some games on Christmas. And, of course I was a little kid, so I didn't watch all the sports there was to watch. I watched some football on Sundays and, played a lot of sports and, was a fan that had some knowledge. Working knowledge. And then, as I started to watch basketball, I got older and started to watch college basketball and in my early teens, and that's why I was playing competitive basketball, and I redshirted for a Division I team, and I ended up not playing there for various reasons. But, that was my payday of basketball into my early 20s. And then I followed it infrequently after that, and then stopped following it altogether for a number of years. Didn't have a TV, and now watch it. With a kind of I fast forward through the whatever it is, and almost just like as a don't really care, know it's staged kind of thing. I don't. It's I don't get into it like I did when I was younger, but it's a fun thing for me to do. Very relaxing, low stress. Not there's nothing but something that's familiar, something from my almost from a past life kind of thing. And I had heard some of the names of the basketball players that had preceded that era of Dr. J and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson in that era when I first started watching basketball. My brother was a basketball fan, and he was 17 years older than me, so he, was a more avid fan, and, he played basketball as an athlete. And he talked about quite a bit. And, you hear these names in broadcasts and things like this, and then I didn't really understand the ABA all that much, but I think it was called Soul Power was the name of the, there was I used to watch Soul Train when I was a kid. That was afros were a big thing in the African American community. Even white people were sporting afros, and it was a whole thing in the NBA with Dr. J and some of these other players. And I didn't realize the cultural effects. There's some of the stories were amazing. Some of the racial stuff that had happened. Like there was a player who, he was the first player to leave college early. Like the NBA and the NCAA had a wink-wink deal, and there was a they were making big money on players in the NCAA and then underpaying them in the NBA, and the ABA created sort of a bargaining chip for the players where they were able to get more salaries. And some of them were able to declare hardships. And there's one guy that the first ABA, first player that they could draft who was an underclassman who hadn't graduated. We all know how the NCAA is like a fucking, it's basically child labor, right? Where they would exploit these kids, these college athletes, and make millions of dollars off of them and give them a bullshit education that in many cases, was fabricated and not, legitimate. They were not going to class. They were basically, whatever. This guy, Spencer Haywood, his dad had died, and he had 9 siblings, and his mom was picking cotton in Mississippi. And it was a fucked up story. There's a lot more of the story. And then, there was a whole bunch of things that went down where he couldn't play, and the NBA took him. As a whole bunch of shit that happened. He signed a bogus contract. The guy in the NBA, the ABA contract that he signed, the guy said, "Oh, we're family now," and gave him a $1.9 million contract for like 4 or 6 years or something. It turned out that other than $400,000, the rest of it was he would only get it if he worked for the company between the ages of 50 and 70. The guy's company, whatever the guy owns, some business. And then when they called him on it, he got all racial and prejudicial, the owner, and they went to the NBA. It was a whole fucked up thing. But the lawsuits and the ABAs where they 3-point field goal, 3-point shot came, that started the ABA, and then the dunk contest and a whole bunch of shit, like just the style of play and all these things. And the ABA started because they thought that they were going to merge, like the AFL and the NFL merged, and the whole only a couple of teams, only 4 teams merged, and most of them went bankrupt. It was kind of an interesting story, and the cultural aspect of it. But in terms of the business of the NBA and the way the players got played and the way that they were marketed, and there's all these different things that came out of it, right? Because it was a dying league. The NBA was like a bush league, and they're paying them like $12,000. Some of the lower level players were getting paid only $12,000 a year. They had to work multiple jobs, and it wasn't very entertaining. And they had to elevate the game in some way in terms of making it a product. It's entertainment. Of course, getting it on TV and the rest of it. Social media makes, like, there's all these sports now that grow out of nowhere. Of course, pickleball, but there's all these other, sports that just have been created. And now with the internet and other things, you can get viewership and sponsorship, and you can make something of it. But there was, limited access back then. I mean, we grew up, there was 4 channels, including PBS, right? But when I watched basketball when I was a kid, I thought it was like fucking everybody was watching it, and, there was limited things to watch, and yet still they had very low viewership. NFL wasn't what it was today. The baseball was the number 1 sport back then, and then, sports grew with the whole way that it became a global game. These things became global, of course, the Olympics, and so much of it is parasitic, and so many grifters and, businessmen and agents and all these scammers and all these people. The whole thing was a lot fucking more seedy than I thought about, right? Like, I know now because I understand the degradation, and and things have gotten worse, right? Everything's now so corrupt. Corrupt isn't the low energy, low vibration. When I first started the meditation when I was 29 years old, 33 years ago, I kind of realized all this stuff, the materialistic world and the material world and all these things that people think about as being important, all this stuff, it's illusionary. And there's nothing here everything is transitory. And as you grow older, and you think about things that were important to you or were important to people in general, and then no one gives a shit about them, right? And like every year there's a Super Bowl champion, and every 4 years there's a new president, and every, this business is popping, and this person's being, embarrassed and humiliated, and like none of it matters. You see that after time, all this stuff becomes more and more insignificant. My first big spiritual experience was like, it's all a joke. I laughed. Like all the things that people think is so important in terms of material world is just illusionary, and it's just a joke, right? It's an illusionary experience, and you have 70 years for your eternal soul. That lasts. I mean, whatever amount of time that the whole, the length of the universe. Your soul existed at the beginning of the universe, has been around for whatever billions of years or whatever it might be, and will be around for the remainder of the life of the universe. And this life is so insignificant, and everything that happens on Earth is so insignificant to compare to these kind of things. Like it's like a life of a fly, right? These insects that live one fucking day, and that isn't even I mean it's even less significant than that. Comparing yourself to an amoeba. Then also one's full potential. One's full potential, where you're a realized soul. You've maximized your spiritual energy, your spiritual evolution, and you become what God created you to become. And when you reach that level of existence, what you are now is like a bug to what you could be, right? Like you're an insect. You'd be a gnat compared to what you could be as a fully realized, evolved person living up to their full potential. All right. So, anyways, I did a video this morning, and it had to do with the stream I had last night, and then this being my 33rd anniversary of doing the meditation. And so I'm going to put the whole video here at the end. This is going to be a longer video, I think. And then I got one more video to make for Friday. To go up on Wednesday. This thing will go up tomorrow night on 2, or tomorrow afternoon, was it? I don't know. Some shit like that. This video is going up tomorrow night at 9. And then I'll take a couple days off or whatever it is. So, and there'll be a shit ton of stuff for me to cover. That's all meaningless. Anyways, here's the rest of the video. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Monday, August 3rd. I'm going to put this audio at the end of my video that'll go up for tomorrow. And I will, I don't know what I'll do. I'm just waking up. Today is the 33rd year that I've done, 33rd anniversary of my doing the Sajmark meditation. And, the 33rd year is not, what do you call it? It's not, there's no numbers. There's no particular anniversary. They make a big deal of it, like they're doing Master Chargy's would be his 100th birthday next year, July 24th. He'll be 100. He would have been 100 years old. So he died in 2014. So he was 88. So he lived a fairly long life, especially for India, where there's a much shorter life expectancy. And even Kamlesh, the Daji, is going to do a big thing for him, or at least it's going to be. He went to Hong Kong. I heard from the Daji Truther, because I asked him about it, and he had been away in Africa, and I think in Africa, I'm not sure. And he sent me like these 3. He was a key speaker. He's a successful, I think he's a wealthy guy. And I think he's a successful photographer, like a renowned person. And he was a key person, like I don't know if he got an award. I have to look at it. I gotta look at it again. Here, I'll pull up the thing here. He's speaker advisor and to chairman person. He had some kind of foundation. He was the spotlight speaker. They have like a picture of him and some other stuff. They sent me a link to a page that doesn't exist. And then I'm not sure what his. Oh, he has something on X. Not sure what this is. Anyways, it sent me these different things. they are very big at like getting awards and this kind of thing where I've successfully completed 33 years in Seismark, and there'd be applause. Like if I got up and gave a talk, or somebody would introduce me to, not that that would happen, but I'm just saying as an example, like and the 75th anniversary, the big ones, the 25, 50, and 75 anniversary, 50 years of doing the system. 50 years of marriage, something like that. I've successfully completed 60 years of marriage, whatever. And so they have a different way of looking at these things. They celebrate these things. Like he was very, proud. I congratulated him, but I didn't know what it was that he was doing here. I mean, he gave a speech or something. Some kind of thing called Internet Enablers. I'm not sure what that is. Anyways, I found this thing here, and I'm not sure. It says, such an honor to and deeply humbling to be included in the list of Internet enablers, along with dear friends, pioneers, and visionaries from the region. The Internet Enablers Award is a commitment to preserving the history of the Internet by recognizing those who contribute to Asia Pacific. Thank you, Internet Enabler Award, for this recognition. Of course, enabler is not a good. And down here, and here they are. Internet Enablers Board announced a remarkable group of pioneers whose visions and dedication, hard work helped build the internet across South Asia, long before the internet became an essential part of the everyday life. This is so yeah, so good for him. He's got this thing, but he was, and then he thanked me for congratulating him. But I recognized years ago that they have a different way of looking at milestones and things like this. But that's not why I'm talking about this. So, and I'm only talking about this because I had an epic dream this morning as I woke up with Master Chargy in it. And so let me get to that part. And so, I've had these various dreams. This is probably one of the most vivid ones. And I was at a place, this has happened a few times, like there's some kind of secret room or something. And that part's a little bit not as clear. I don't remember that as well. But like I was at some place, and I think I was in a foreign country. And there's always these secret rooms, and somebody who was a new practitioner of the meditation said something like, you want to see Master Chargy? And I'm like, wow, is he here? And he said, yeah. And we went to some room, and we came in, and his wife, Master Chargy's wife, was sleeping in a bed. And I greeted her. I always, the few times I saw her, she was in a wheelchair. She died about 10 years before Chargy. And I don't know how great their wives were. Like they said that Babaji's wife sort of nagged him, henpecked him. And Chargy's wife seemed, well, whenever I saw her, she looked like a deer in headlights. And I don't know if she was having dementia or she was confused. She was in a wheelchair. Like she just, someone who, her eyes were just filled like with fear or whatever it was, right? Panic. I know from, she didn't seem to be as supportive, or she seemed to be stubborn maybe from his writings. But she did encourage him. There was this one story where it flooded in Chennai, kind of like, it flooded, probably not as bad, but there was a flood. And he was supposed to go over to, it was Sunday group meditation, and he had a preceptor, and his wife like almost demanded he go. Like she was, in that way it would be like his spiritual evolution would help her in some way. I'm not sure, or just whatever it was. But she was very insistent that he go. And Chargy said he always had a fear of snakes, not like a phobia, but like he didn't, And he was, walking in water that was like waist deep or whatever. And he showed up at the preceptor's house. And the preceptor's like, what are you doing here? Like it's flooded. And Chargy was, he couldn't really meditate. Like he was just worried about how he's going to get home. And he walked out of the guy's house, and there was a bus that happened to be running. It's like 2 feet of water. I mean, what, 3 feet of water or something. And there was a bus, and it was one bus that was on schedule, and it dropped him off right at his house. And he thought that was like a sign, of his commitment in the whole thing. But his mom, his wife had encouraged him to go, which was like her. I didn't know that much about her. Anyway, so she's there, and I say hi, but she doesn't know who I am. Like, we met a couple times, but. And then Master Chargy was sleeping on the floor, and most of his dreams he is not well. Like, I've had a few dreams where his health is bad, so this is always towards the end of his life. Of course, that's afterwards, really. But he said, and as I come into the room, he said, as I come around, his wife's bed is in front of, like, closer to the door, and I can't see him, and he's sleeping on the floor behind her. And he says, "Is that Paul Romano?" And I was, like, he got excited to see me, which was, a good sign. And I say yes to him, and then, and he's happy to see me, and we hug, which, in real life would not have happened, right? There was, in the Sajmark tradition, the touching the master is not like people want to give him a hug or whatever, but it's just not advisable. In fact, there was a thing, and the preceptors were supposed to, be careful, like the ones that were, especially the full preceptors, the ones who were like more charged and had more energy. The full preceptors were brought up to the mind region with 7 spiritual points charged, where the provisional preceptors had 1 point charged in the heart. And that, when I got my provisional preceptor sitting, it was quite significant, the energy. It was kind of, overwhelming. People think about power and things like this as a spiritual power, which is very subtle. But when you get it, it affects your whole system, and it kind of, it should freak you out a little bit, because it's, whatever it is. I mean, spiritual power, but any kind of power. Like, it should freak you out a little bit. Like, people want power, but it's, it's a lot to deal with, and especially your system, and spiritual energy just flows through your system, and, and like, it needs to be a purification to retain it, and to, have it not corrupt you in some way or another. So you have to go through intense cleaning, which I did, like, really brutal. But anyways, in the Sajmark system, you don't hug the master because he has all this energy. And I know there was 2 stories. One, my ex dated this guy, and I met his brother. By the time I had, started meditation, this guy had quit. Or at least, I never met him and knew him when he was a member. But he was at a gathering in France, and Babaji was, probably a couple of years away from dying. I think it was like late, the late 70s or early 80s. And he was sitting in the aisle seat, and Babaji walked down the aisle. And he was, older, and he sort of stumbled, and he fell, and he landed on the guy. And the guy went back to his room, and he cried for like 3 days. He just wept. Like, he just fucking fell apart. Like, the energy that went through him. He later would quit. My ex, I think they were dating at the time, or whatever. But the guy was like a mess for like 3 days. And it's because, all this energy went through him. And he would later quit and start an anti-Sajmark website, like a thing. There was a couple of guys that did that, and they ended up connecting with each other. One was in France, and the other one guy was French, and unrelated to the, this gathering, Babaji's last gathering. I think it was from 1981. He died in 83. So, but anyways, but the other one was someone I met, and we were traveling in Hyderabad, and we went to see where the ashram was, my family and I, and when we were extended stay in India. This is where my ex had left. Sri Lanka was like a year before that. And we went up to the Hyderabad ashram, which was just a field, like, now it's it's got the world's biggest meditation center and all this stuff. But it was just, they were just barely starting it. And we stayed at this other ashram. And it was when Charji died. So we went up there as a family to check out the new ashram and to Charji had been, you know, on death's door for maybe over a year. So this is 2014. He died December 21st, I believe. 19th, I'm not sure. I could check it out, but pretty sure it's the 21st. But it was December, and the end of December. And we were on the train when we found out. We got there, and the guy we were supposed to see went back to where Chargy was. Like so he went to the ashram while we were heading to his house. So we got set up there. In fact, we got there and he was there, but he was going to leave. And somehow he arranged for us to go see this guy. And this guy lived there was another ashram there in Hyderabad, which was kind of great, but my son and I went back there and it sucked. And they made us kind of feel unwelcome. It was weird. It was too hot. So my kids were at a youth gathering. My son was too young, like a gathering for teenagers. And my son was too young, and we went there to stay there before the final gathering in 2016 when we left. So, we left and came back to America. So, but anyways, we met this guy. And he took us on a tour. He had two very wealthy, successful American kids who lived in America. And they both had really neat houses. One was built into a red rock, like kind of red rock you see in Utah, Arizona, Nevada, these places. And the red rock, the wall was like the rock was built into the wall, and they had an indoor pool. And it was just this amazing house in India, and his kids would come back, not so often. And then his other kid had some nice to the house. It was like on a little hill, sort of a mountain. On the top of the hill, there's two cool houses, and he lived on the bottom of the hill. Not as nice house, but nice for India. And then his wife was in a wheelchair. And he took us for a walk, this guy was really energized, and he took us for a walk, and he was wearing sandals, and he fell and landed hard on the rock, and he was an older guy. And he popped right back up like nothing happened. And he said, "Guess how old I am?" And I thought probably in his 60s, but because he said that, I'm like, or maybe 70. Because when somebody says something like that, they're older than you think. But I thought 50s or 60s. He was older than me, and I was in my 50s or whatever, but he was in good shape. And he said 94 or something like that. And we were like, holy shit. And he had told us a story earlier where he was driving when Babaji was also sort of older. And Babaji was sitting in the middle, and he was in the front seat next to him. He was a younger guy, back then, probably in his 20s or something. And the driver was like, I was going too fast or whatever, and went around a curve, and Babaji sort of fell on top of the guy. And he put his hands like maybe on his chest, put his hands on the guy. And the guy said he felt like energy just flow through him. Like he was like, he really knew he liked this practice, but he was a little not sure of it or wasn't, fully convinced or whatever. And the energy that went through him and Babaji put his hands on him was like crazy. Like, it was like this kind of situation where his wife was like clearly much older than him. Like, she was probably younger than him when they married, but she was in a wheelchair and almost incapacitated, right? He was taking care of her, and and he was totally energized and like spry at 90. Like it was just one of those Green Mile situation with Tom Hanks. The guy healed him in some way, and he was like 125 and still kicking, still young. But it's more of a curse for him. You see these movies where people are, like that movie where they have, I forget a series of movies where they live. There's some people that live like forever. They're like immortal. And, they just go through series of spouses and friends, and they outlive their kids, and, they just don't die. And after a while, they're like, fuck, it's like a curse. Probably pretty soon it's a curse. It's called Highlander. I Googled there could only be one, which I remember for the movie, because they had to kill each other, and there could only be one guy left at the end. And there's, it was called The Highlander, but then there was like 5 other movies. or something like that. But anyways, so going back to the story. So Phil Master Chargy had, said before, I think before he gave me the hug or after, he said, um, you know, like I was struggling financially the last time he saw him. And I said, no, I'm doing great. It's fine. It's, I didn't say I got my shit together or whatever, but it was like basically that. And he was very happy. And, and I just got this sense of like, no matter what had happened in my life up until this point, my life now, like, here in my waking hours, not in the dream, that I was going to end up exactly where I was. And it was supposed to be this way, which I kind of feel anyways. I mean, I don't have any doubts about that. But, I mean, like the whole thing that happened with Saj Marg, and I thought about this last night that I've endured the collapse of the organization. Like I didn't need the organization to keep me going. And that's significant. Like, lots of people needed the organization. In fact, almost everybody. But like I've thrived now, doing the gratefulness meditation and whatever I do in the YouTube channels and talking about the system, that I've kind of thrived in this last couple of years since, breaking free or being released from the heartfulness debacle. Like my condition has gotten better. I've advanced spiritually. My consciousness is, like there's been some, advancement and, blessings. Oh, I said something to the, when he said, he was struggling financially or whatever it was. But I think it was more than just that. Like I've been struggling when he died because, I was about to go through a divorce and all these other things. And so, he was saying that you were struggling, and I said, by your grace, which is the way they would say it there. By the Master's grace, I'm doing better. Because you never, try to take credit for the accomplishments, going, this is like accomplishment stuff. But, I realized that, whatever it is, and things kind of, I had a lot of advantages other people who do the system didn't have. Like I saw firsthand Dodgy just sucking and being stupid and then being basically ostracized, and Dodgy picking my ex in the divorce, which, I would never put him in a position to do that, to pick sides. Like it's just wrong because it would be wrong. Like it would be wrong for the Master to pick sides. Like I wouldn't go to him and try to get him to, take my side, but my ex did, and he should never have done it. And, like he was, I talked about this recently, how there's a guy who contacted me who had known me and my ex for a while. He was somebody who ended up selling survival, like MREs and things, and he had a business. One of the few kind of truther people. And he was kind of into Trump in 2000. This is 2016. And he went to the ashram when everyone was freaked out about Trump winning because all the, American people are liberals. The Indian people are more conservative. But he went to the ashram, and my ex was there, and he saw her. And all the people there were treating her like she was a celebrity, and her husband, who it wasn't her husband then, because we were like still, she took forever for her to give me the divorce when she had left and was already with another guy. It was weird shit, but everything about her was fucking crazy and weird. And they were treating her like she was a celebrity, and the guy, Dodgy, fell all over. This guy had practiced years ago, and I think he quit because he didn't like Chargy, and he came back. And Dodgy was just really, whenever they got, they had a good relationship. But, my ex had loved Chargy so much, and Dodgy was clearly shitting on his legacy, all that stuff. But the guy said, he was just, he thought everyone at the ashram was acting so weird, and, that whatever's happened, they really, and, Chargy used to come here every year until he got too old, and then he had gatherings for Americans in India. And, those years were kind of, the years he couldn't come back to America, the mission started to fall apart a little bit because he needed to come back and give it a boost every year. And Dodgy has only come back here twice, and once was right after. Once was in 2016. He had 7 pharmacies, and his kids were taking the pharmacies and scamming. That whole thing that happened. The SEC investigating them, and the whole whatever, inflating the profits of their failed online deliver to your house pharmacy business that was thriving during COVID, and they got a bunch of investor money and then absconded with it to India, and there's a whole thing there. But he came back once in 2016, and then a few years ago he came, and he didn't go to any of the ashrams, and so it's all like it's all dwindled. It's withered, the system, because there's no energy being put into it. He sucks. Most of the Americans were boomer hippies, and I'm sure they're all dying off and older. They're in their 70s and 80s, and there's no energy there. There's no gatherings here, whatever. I don't know what they do at the ashrams, but it's the system is withered here, and there's no energy. There's no transmission and things. But then I woke up after he hugged me, and and I realized he was happy with me specifically, and whatever, and then when I woke up, I realized today was the anniversary day. I knew yesterday, but I wasn't conscious of it in the dream. And I thought about what I thought last night, how that I had a really good meditation. My condition was great. I just woke up feeling the energy and just went right into a meditation. And I was thinking about it, how the two things were the dream where it was I was I'm exactly everything that's going on is exactly the way it's supposed to be, which is always good to get reassurance, but I felt that way anyway, but it's now I feel it stronger. And the second thing is that I mean, of all when you complete the years of doing the meditation, it's hard. There's times you want to quit. It's I know so many great people have quit, or just they don't quit, but they've kind of mailed it in. They're still going through the motions, but they're not dynamic. They're not they're not quitting. And there's lots of people like that now who are they're doing whatever they're doing. This guy said that this guy that called me some years ago, he reported that he talked to a senior preceptor, and everybody was meditating on Chargy's form, they were still pretending to be a part of the Dodgy thing, but they were really still connected to Chargy, which Dodgy is aware of, and he's trying to basically, I'm sure he doesn't care if those people quit or not. He wants his own thing, his own people, and he can't create it because he has no personality. But I've found a way, by master's grace would be, I mean, by the blessings of the system and whatever, I found a way to keep the energy going, and just, I mean, I kind of stumbled into it because that's there was no roadmap, but, doing the gratefulness meditation and keeping the energy alive, and, whatever it is, the system and the method after Dodgy has fucked it up as organizationally. In the course of the beginning, I couldn't have continued the system in the early days. Things had to happen for me to be able to do it. But, the development of the YouTube channel and the ability to make the videos that I make, and then, all the things I went through the last, was, I guess, 20 years, so it was 10 years ago, 2016, where, I came back from India, and then 3 or 4 years ago when we started, I think it's 2023 when I started Gratefulness Meditation, 2022 maybe. Well, one of those things, I have it, I have the date somewhere. But find a way, despite the organization. But when I was beginning, I couldn't have existed and done the system without the organization. I needed preceptors. I needed, a center of people to go meditate with. There was a good center in the 5 College area of Massachusetts where I lived. And then the gatherings at the ashram and things, and then going to India and meeting Chargy, all that. I needed it. I needed the whole, up until I didn't. And that was, I mean, I needed the system when I went through the divorce. I lived next to preceptors. I was getting sittings every, I mean, sometimes 2 or 3 sittings a week, individual, and doing maybe 2 to 3 group meditations a day. I mean, just really, needed that to get through that and get cleaned out and, to deal with this stuff originally. And then came back to America, and I was worried, like, without all that infrastructure and without other people, because I came back to Nevada, near Vegas, and there was nobody there. There were a few people I met once, and there was a person who did the meditation, and he learned from me, and he would meet with these people. I don't know if he's still doing it. He's kind of disappeared, but we met in Nevada. He was a viewer who started the meditation. There was a preceptor would come out, and I saw him one time, and then moved to Utah. But I was there a year, and I met these people once. And there's a guy who was, there's a white guy who was a kind of a hippie, and he was. We went to his house, and there was like an Asian woman, like a, I don't know what she was, maybe like half Asian or something. And then the preceptor and the new guy wasn't. He didn't come that time, but we met at like a cafe or something. We talked for a bit. And so, but there was a handful of people there, but I didn't really, there was no preceptor. And then, the whole thing with Dodge, I went to that gathering. It was a mess, and Dodgy was, it basically ghosted me at the gathering, pretended I didn't exist, walked right by me a couple times. And there was all that. My daughter was cutting herself, as we left the gathering. It was a fucking mess. Just brutal. But, at some point I realized I didn't need any of it. I didn't need the organization, I would prefer it, but I didn't need, these things. I could connect directly. And that was, significant. And I mean, it was like a test of my, I had to step up in some way. And I thought about that last night, and it just popped in my, like I was walking, and it just occurred to me. And so that's, the dream was those two things. So it's been a significant anniversary, in terms of, like the dream, a very vivid dream, and like a sort of reassurance, and from Chargy. So yesterday I made, as part of my video, I had watched this movie with Kevin Hart called 72 Hours, and it's a movie where Kevin Hart plays an advertising executive. I'm going to show the whole clip, and I'm going to say this again. He plays an advertising executive, and he's hanging out with these Generation Zs or whatever the 20-year-olds are right now, because he's old and out of touch with the youth. And I thought I'd watch a few minutes of it and get rid of it, but I watched a little bit of it. When my wife would take TV naps, and I was like, oh, it's pretty funny. There's some good bits. It was a little bit more. They shit out these shows now on Netflix and Amazon and some of these other streaming services, where they get a big name celebrity and they pay them whatever millions of dollars. And they write a shitty script and, have a bunch of, maybe they get a few has-beens of people who are famous but no longer relevant or desperate for work. And they make some kind of a slap-together movie that's, low budget. But this one was pretty well done, at least the beginning. It started to fade, but there were some funny parts in the beginning. But there's a scene at the end where he's, it's a bachelor party thing. And he says to one of the guys who's kind of clueless, if to remember the date of the wedding. And the date of the wedding is July 7th, my birthday. And the guy says, no, he said, I thought it was Halloween, October 31st, which was my ex's birthday, right? And I, talk about it. I'll include it in this video. For those of you hearing this on my next podcast, future video, it's the previous video. The video is entitled, You Can't Appeal to Their Higher Nature Because They Don't Have One. And I was like not really wanting to grab that clip in the audio. It was something I should put in Journey series, but I was like, I don't want to do it. But now you'll see this. All this is going into the Journey series at the end of my 288th edition of the Journey series, and it's going in the standalone video on Gratefulness meditation. So I woke up this morning. I went and I opened up the template, the old video. I saved the template of the videos, all the various clips, and I copied the clip of the clip I saw of the Kevin Hart thing, and I'll show you that. So those of you watching this in the Journey series and watching it on Gratefulness Meditation, you'll see that in a moment. My clip from yesterday, and I'll end the video with that. But it was interesting that my ex's birthday was in the in the clip. With my birthday. My birthday's not a significant date. Of course, Halloween is. And, I mean, it's weird. And so, and I talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. Or, and I talk about that when I talk about the clip, which you'll see in a second. But what I want to add to that is, he says it's not October 31st. It's not Halloween. It's July 7th. Like, the more important, the date is July 7th. And, I didn't think about it till this morning when I did the meditation, but, my ex was doing the meditation 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years even before I did. I'm not sure how long, like she would be in her 40th something year, but it had a much more relationship with Chargy. Like had a more, personal relationship with Chargy. She spent significant time with him. She was there at that gathering. That gathering in France was like a year or two before Babaji died. And like Chargy had been nominated as the next guy. And she, had these really personal letters that were exchanged, like were really, spiritually intimate letters. She ended up fucking up a center, and Chargy sort of, like, I don't know if he was upset with her or disappointed in her or whatever. But she was really into the system. And when I, first met her, I was a new preceptor. She had been preceptor for a while. And throughout our early years of our marriage, like, she was fucked up from, being sexually abused by her dad and physically and emotionally abused by her mom and physically abused by her dad, who were rich people. They were, rich, educated people, but were fucked up. Psychological issues run through her whole family. It affected my kids, and just a mess. And she would have these mental breakdowns and things. But when she wasn't like all fucked up, she was an A student, top of her class in her high school. Went to an Ivy League school, a couple of schools, Wellesley and Boston College. Got a master's degree. Really educated, but didn't ever have a real job. Never had a career. Failed as a mom, like failed as a homeschooler, failed as a farmer, whatever goals she had. She just couldn't, she was good at studying things. Great researcher, psychic, she had a crystal pendulum, and she was, she had, had some psychic abilities or whatever, but just a failure, like a complete failure. But she was really passionate, like Erica Kirk is passionate about Christianity and, really intense, in a way that is off-putting to people. And I thought that part was at least real. I thought that, for years, that as fucked up as she was, and she would have these mental, psychological, psychotic breakdowns, and she had like altered personalities, and I couldn't tell whether it was an act or real. And like she had these things that looked like she was MK Ultra, like she had the same MK Ultra things, like all the things that, people who had been through these mind control programs or said they had been through them, because they're all fucked up. It's like a fucked up thing. And she had been hospitalized. She had tried to commit suicide, I think twice, was hospitalized, put on a psychiatric hold, all that stuff. And so, but at least in terms of her commitment to Saj Marg, I thought it was real. And I always thought it was, better than mine. I've always been a slacker. I'm not as, I'm just not I'm not a perfectionist. My ex was a perfectionist, these things. And I thought that her, and her time that she had spent before we got together, she had some, I always thought that she was like, more into it than I was. But of course, the end, it was clear that she wasn't. For one, she just failed, like she was good at researching, but never good at implementing. But her biggest failure was she was a victim. And you can't be a victim and do Saj Marg, because in the Saj Marg system, everything that happens to you happens because it's supposed to happen, because of your samskaras. There's no victimization. Like everything's happening because of what happened in your past and what you need now. And so you have to take everything with gratitude. It's clearly the most important attitude that you take. Like everything's coming from God, so just deal with it and be grateful. That's why I say be grateful. And my ex is the opposite of that. She loves being a victim. She tells people about her being sexually abused. Like the first hour you meet her, oftentimes, it's and it's a predominant thing that goes through her system. She's always finding ways to be a victim in all of her relationships, and you can't do the Sajmark system and be that way. But aside from that, she said she loved Chargy. She was one of these people that said she loved him so much, like the way Erica Kirk, held up her hands to Charlie and all that shit. And it's just fake. Like I realized she was a poser, towards the last 10 years of our situation where I couldn't get out, but it sucked. But I mean, I always had my doubts, but like she was like this, the intensity that's there, but she was a poser, like it wasn't a real thing. And then, she embraced Dodgy. Like, for one, she was the most anti-vax person ever. Like, she was, anti-vax. Like, I learned a lot of the stuff from her, a little bit from my brother, but mostly from her. She was very, very aware of the hypocrisy of the medical system, and she had some issues, medical issues. And so, our kids weren't vaccinated because of her research. And, like, again, the most anti-vax person that I know. And I knew a bunch. Like, I've known a lot of people who are anti-vax. And my son tells me she got the vax, the COVID vax, because Dodgy was pushing it. I knew exactly why, because Dodgy was pushing it. And, like anybody who's at least any kind of a critical thinking skills knows that Dodgy doesn't like Chargy. And Dodgy's a complete fuck up. And he's wrecked the system. Like, it's just there. Like, all these people who love Chargy but can't, reconcile what Dodgy's done, and they don't, because of their cultural things or whatever. But my ex was, threw away a lot of what she believed because of it was what Chargy did. When Chargy was gone, she embraced all the Dodgy shit, and Dodgy was a pharmacist. And in India, where there was only probably out of like 16 to 20 million people in Hyderabad area, in Telangana, I mean, millions of people probably in the greater, all the people who are in Telangana, there's probably, like 100 million people. I could just ask. There's almost 40 million people in Telangana, and they had 200 cases of COVID, right? It didn't do well in India at all, even with all the filth. It's a very dirty place, and I mean, and the overpopulation, and it's very disease-ridden. I mean, everyone gets sick when they go there. Like, it's very easy to get sick in India. But it was so hot and humid, and COVID didn't do well there. It just didn't do well. Like, the Indian people did not suffer from COVID. And Dodgy made these very strict rules. First, he said it was the bats. Then he thought it was the chickens. And then he said it was the pangolins. Like, he was just such a fucking bozo. But then, like, I have a whole section of, like, video clips of him being a total fucking moron about COVID. But then he said that the only people who could come to the ashram were ones that were vaccinated. And this is after America and everywhere else has opened up. This is like 2021. He's opened the ashram late to the fucking party, last person. He was wearing a double mask. Like a special mask. It was like $300. My brother, who is really against vaccines, got the mask. My brother was wearing double masks before that. But this, he wore this, it was almost like a leather mask, and it was double, kind of black and thick, and he was wearing it. It just made it totally hard to breathe in a hard place. He had polio when he was a kid, so he walked funny, and he had some issues, whatever it was. So, but everyone had to wear masks, and it was hot as shit there, just stupid. You can't meditate with a fucking mask on. And he made only people who were vaccinated, and only people who had private transportation who could come in a car. He wouldn't let anybody would go like on a bus or public transportation. Again, nobody had COVID. Like, nobody had fucking COVID, right? Nobody had COVID back then, like in India. And it was tailing off. Everything else in America was opened up, and America got hit way harder by COVID. And my ex ended up getting the vax, and so I said, "Are you sure?" And I told my son, because he didn't even know, my youngest son, and I was like, she was the most anti-vax person I know. Like, why would she get the vax? Like, he was confused. He didn't even know. And he went and asked her, and she said she's still anti-vax. She just thinks this one's special. This is a good one because Dodgy told her, and it was like so hilarious because it's definitely the worst one, right? Because it was rushed out by Trump. They didn't do third-party testing. It has, it's genetically manipulative and all these things. But she threw away all of her beliefs because Dodgy said so, and I saw this numerous times. And Dodgy was told, like, she gave up on her love for Chargy and was just embracing Dodgy and on top of her victimization stuff. And I'm like, oh, she's not even a real practitioner of the system. Like, she sucks. No critical thinking skills. Just knuckling under. Dodgy's like anti-truther. All that stuff. Like, he's just a moron. And she embraced his his stupidity. I was going to say moronism, but his stupidity. And I was like, oh, you suck at this. Like, you're just a total poser with everything, right? So I didn't. I mean, I was aware of it. I don't. I mean, there's no competition here because like one person is completely failing, and the other person's struggling. I'm struggling to do the right thing, embrace the system and recreate something that's missing a whole huge chunk of it. The mission is there's 3 M's: the master, the method, and the mission. And now there's no master, there's no mission, there's just the method. I mean, the master is there, etherically, but still, it's a hard thing. We're missing 2 of the 3 M's, right? There's only 1 M, and I'm doing my best to compensate for it. But so I already knew this, but this movie thing where the person's saying, no, it's not Halloween. It's July 7th. Like, it was a, weird thing to have at the end of a movie that I was already kind of over and was, I was barely watching it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And I should say it's not me. It's the, decisions in the process. Like, there's a way to be successful in this difficult situation, one that's not predicted. There's no information on what you do if the master just sucks. Like, what do you do? And, all of us who are left here had to figure it out. And I think I've done the best job that I possibly could. Like, there's always, you could do a little bit more here, a little bit more there. But in terms of the overall aspect of it, I've, not just, again, a lot of things helped me. A lot of things went a certain way that made it easier for me than it was maybe for other people. I'm not, but still, just a need to keep going, like a need that, this system, with all the indicators, it's like there's no reason to keep going, other than your personal connection that is, that needs to be enhanced by me. I don't have the benefit of the master in the organization to help prop me up. So anyways, let me close with this clip. I'll show you the stuff with Kevin Hart here. And I have a little audio there. And then this will be the end of the Journey series for this, this particular episode. And, this will be a standalone video for people on Gratefulness meditation. But, I'm feeling pretty good about my 33 years of doing the Sagemark system and, going strong. And, I think that's the biggest hurdle was what happened. And I have a pathway to success to complete, it's just a lot of the Sagemark system is just don't quit. Like, and don't quit is a negative suggestion. You don't have negative suggestions. So keep on going. Like, it's, you keep on going. Like, no matter what, no matter, you keep on moving forward. Like, you just, even if you have, like, whatever, if you have a spiritual fall or you have, whatever issues, you just get back up and you quit you quit or whatever you struggle in. You just keep on going. So all right, here's the clip from my last video. Okay, so I was going to put this in the beginning of the video. I watched Kevin Hart's new movie on Netflix, whatever the fuck it is, 72 Hours, I think it's called. And I thought it was going to suck worse than it did. It took me 2.5, 3 days to watch it, like in different parts, my wife was sleeping. When we watch TV together, she takes naps, I, watch something else. And I was also watching the birth of the ABA, which is kind of interesting. I think I'll talk about that in a future video. But the premise of anything that has like we recently watched the show Rooster, which I thought was going to suck too, but it was actually very good. And big part of that was the generational misunderstandings that happen. And that was what this 72 Hours, Kevin Hart plays a advertising executive who goes in with the bachelor party with a bunch of these millennial Gen Z, whatever they are, because he doesn't understand them. And there were some good comedy bits, and it kind of got shitty. There were some funny things in the beginning and then sort of faded, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. But anyways, towards the end of the movie, there's going to be a wedding. And this isn't really a spoiler alert, and you really can't spoil this kind of movie because you pretty much know what's coming. Like, they're telegraphing the jokes and shit, the plot. But I'm born on July 7th, and my ex was born on Halloween, and this weird-ass thing happened.
Great time to this wedding. Freshmen don't fuck up the date. Tell me when it is. October. July 7th, freshman. Oh, July 7th. I thought it was Halloween. It's not. It's not on Halloween.
There are these days that become big days. Like October 7th now is a big day. Of course, 9/11 is always a big day. You have the holiday days, July 4th. And then you have days that aren't as significant. Like certain days are people's birthdays, celebrity birthdays. There's some kind of event happens, whatever. July 7th has not been a big day. And, I don't think about my birthday that much. On my birthday, I don't, celebrate it or whatever. Usually have a good day. Now, I used to not. But it's a weird day. And it's a weird day to have a wedding, maybe if it's on a Saturday. It wasn't on a Saturday this year. It was on a Tuesday. So, it's always weird when my birthday gets mentioned. The July 7th is more obscure. Of course, Halloween is a bigger day. My ex was born on Halloween, and she had past life memories of being burned at the stake. And, those witch hunts were bullshit. But, she has some association with witchcraft and was, somewhat psychic and was a succubus and just fucked up. And then being born on Halloween. Also, she would get this disease or physical condition where she would burp out sulfur. Like her body would turn everything into sulfur. They talk about demons smelling like sulfur. Like people used to say Hillary Clinton and now Donald Trump smell like sulfur. Like this whole thing. And she had a lot of, and I can't remember all the stuff, but it was kind of weird. You might just be a witch. And so her being born on Halloween and that whole exchange was weird. Not Halloween, July 7th. Yeah, like I'm all for that because of, my association with it. And it was really sucky to, I had to plan all these holidays. I was in charge of making sure everyone had a good birthday and all those things. And so the kids had to have a Halloween and my ex had to have her birthday, and it was just a fucking unbelievably stressful day for a variety of reasons. Anyways, let's go into some other stuff here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.